Hey everybody, happy Thursday and welcome to another Techstrong TV broadcast. Today is Thursday, November 11th. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon and I am so excited about today's episode. We have an outstanding lineup of interviews on today's broadcast, and I'm sure that there will be something here for you. We're going to kick things off with a conversation between Alan and Mike Rothman, who is a security entrepreneur and gadabout, and they talk about the recent valuations in the cybersecurity and tech space, whether it is a new bubble or is it real value. Fascinating discussion. I highly encourage you guys to watch this conversation. It is totally one for the books. After that, Alan speaks with Antoine Chigori, who is the field CTO of a company called Kyndryl, which was spun out from IBM. Kyndryl actually recently announced a series of global industry leaders that have tapped the company to help transform their IT environments. Dow, Pitney Bowes, Michelin, and some others are the big names there. The joint solutions developed from these partnerships include areas such as artificial intelligence, 5G, edge computing, hybrid cloud, and security. Good stuff all the way around, enabling their customers to tackle their most pressing business objectives in modern ways. Alan and Antoine talk about this at length, and it is a great conversation. After that, we have the Haunted Hacker podcast. This one is part 2 of a conversation that Mike Jones has with Blacks in Cybersecurity, the Blacks in Cybersecurity group. Specifically, it's easy for me to say, specifically, he speaks with Michaela Barnett, who is a senior analyst at Accenture Federal Services, and she's also the founder and CEO of Blacks in Cybersecurity, as well as Alexandria Barnett, who is a social media specialist at SINAC and director of PR at Blacks in Cybersecurity, and Nico Smith, who is the cyber protection team member at the U.S. Army Cyber Command, and finally Garrison Best, who is cybersecurity consultant at IBM, director of communications at Blacks in Cybersecurity. And they have a very great discussion about cybersecurity, InfoSec, all the usual suspects that Mike talks about in his podcast. It's a great conversation between the 5 of them. Good stuff there. After that, we have our Something Old segment. This is from the recent Cloud Native Days with Kubernetes Virtual Summit. This one features Emad Benjamin. I gotta get my contacts checked, guys. Emad Benjamin, who was the chief technologist of application platforms at VMware. And Emad's presentation is titled Multi-Cloud Distributed Application Runtimes, in which he ventures into the role of modern distributed runtimes that can deliver a declarative approach to the resiliency problem. This is a great presentation and one that's chock full of really useful information for organizations that are having issues with their runtimes and service level indicators and service level objectives. So good stuff all the way around. You definitely want to check this one out. After that, I'm back with the headlines, and then I have a conversation with Dustin Radke, who is the CTO of OnSolve, and we discuss how organizations can leverage artificial intelligence to forecast supply chain impact, which we all know is a very, very large problem these days. And we take kind of a deep dive into the steps companies can take to leverage AI-driven risk intelligence and build critical communication plans to prepare for critical events, including these supply chain shortages and the implications thereof. So it's a great conversation. I totally want you to check that one out. After that, I speak with Rich Naster, who is the VP and Chief Scientist over Digital.ai, and he and I talk about the Scaled Agile framework, something that a lot of organizations are checking out these days. It is definitely a great conversation if you are unfamiliar with the SAFe or Scaled Agile framework, want to learn more about it, definitely check out our conversation. It was a good one. After that, I've got the, what do I have for you? The webinars preview. And then Mitch Ashley comes on with his Analyst Corner, and he talks about the first annual AWS Bug Bust competition, which is actually, it's actually at the AWS reInvent, and they have a challenge going on there in which they try to break the Guinness World Record in bug busting. So Mitch speaks with Jordan Gruber, who is the Senior Technical Product Manager for AWS AI DevOps, and they discuss the record attempt and how everyone can participate, regardless of whether you are at AWS, I think. But you can just register at https://bugbust.aws/ and busting even a single software bug during reInvent. Good stuff. And I wish AWS much luck in achieving that world record. After that, we round things out with a view with Vizard, in which Mike Vizard speaks with members of the Data on Kubernetes community as an introduction to the Data on Kubernetes community, what it is, what it's on about, and how organizations can get involved and why they should get involved. So Mike speaks with Umar Mufti, who is the Director of Product Management at Pure Storage, Gabrielle Bartolini, who is the VP of Cloud Native at EDB, and Melissa Logan, who is the Director of the Data on Kubernetes community. It's a great conversation. It's a great little organization, too. You definitely want to check it out. All right, that is today's lineup, and it's chock full of goodness, folks. And we're going to get things kicked off right after these commercial messages. All right, welcome back, everybody. First up, we have a conversation between Alan and Mike Rothman, who is no stranger to Techstrong Group and Techstrong TV. Mike and Alan talk about the recent valuations in the cybersecurity and tech space and whether we are seeing yet another bubble in the tech funding space or whether this is real value. It's a great conversation. It's certainly one worth checking out. So let's get to it now.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on another Techstrong TV segment. Really happy to have my buddy Mike Rothman with me today on Techstrong TV. For those who don't know Mike, he is, he's a security gadfly, but he's the founder of Security Insight, Securosis, Disrupt Ops, right, as well.
Now, something at Firemont, I'm not exactly sure.
Right, Disrupt Ops part of Firemont. Yeah. But look, if you're in the security world, you've probably met or heard of Mike Rothman, and he's actually become a really nice guy. He's done a complete metamorphosis, right? From the grouchy caterpillar to the butterfly.
Exactly. I don't know how beautiful the butterfly is, but there's definitely been a molting stage.
Yes, and there was a molting. A metamorphosis. Anyway, hey Mike, welcome. Thanks for coming on today.
It's obviously great to be here. Always. So much fun.
So Mike, we were, it's the end of the year. We're looking back. It's been a strange year, right? No doubt about it. It's been unusual. I don't know if we would classify this as unusual or just part of the inflation in the world, but looking at some recent raises and IPOs and some of the merger and acquisition activity, I mean, specifically in the security market, some may say use the word irrational exuberance or
bubblicious. Maybe.
Some may say no. It reflects what's out there.
And I think that's kind of an important context in that if you were to say to me 4 years ago, Apple would be worth 2.5 trillion, right? We would have 4 or 5, depending on where Tesla is on any given day. Companies that are valued at $1 trillion, Alan, $1 trillion. T, not B, not multiple. T, right? I mean, it's and obviously all of that, kind of market cap expansion has applied to security. So you see some of the biggest security companies, right? Your CrowdStrikes, your Palo Altos, your Fortinets, valued at, north of 50 billion, right? With a B now. Zscaler is up there, Splunk, and they're in a bunch of different markets. So you've got these massive, kind of market caps, and that presents the opportunities, and that's kind of flowing downhill, right? So we see some of the recent funding rounds, but remember, I don't know, Alan, you're probably old enough like I am. I'm old enough to remember when being a unicorn was, like a big thing,
special,
right? And that's $1 billion private market valuation. Now, nobody will cover your press release unless you're a unicorn, right? So we're just in a different world now. But I'm curious. Yeah, but I'm curious as to how that impacts how you run a company, right? Both of us have been in, early stage startups. We've been in medium stage startups. We've, and now you look and you say, like my friend Mark Van Zadehoff, right? Old, dear friend of mine, runs Devo now. Devo just raised 250 on a 1.5 valuation. And it's a great business, right? It's a great business, from the standpoint, huge momentum, kind of very cool technology on that front. What do you do with $250 million, right? Our friend Raj, he's going to raise another couple hundred million, 600 in general. What do you do? And yes, I understand that we have to pay architects $500,000 a year now. So, so yes, there's been wage inflation that's driving a lot of this stuff, but still $250 million. What do you do with that?
So I actually interviewed Mark right after the raise. I've interviewed Raj. And I've interviewed a bunch of these people who've raised the money. Couple of things I want to point out. First of all, on the Devo 1.5 billion, Devo's, I think, a great symbol for what we see. These are not overnight successes.
No.
Devo's been around 10 years.
Well, Wiz is an overnight success.
Wiz, maybe you're right, but Devo's been around 10 years.
Yeah,
the interesting thing about Devo is they raised, I'm going to say because it's you and Mike, they raised a ton of money from Insight a couple years ago.
That's right.
When they moved a lot of the stuff from Madrid here.
A bunch more right after Van Zandt.
So I thought they were done raising, but so they raised this money. I asked Mark, why would someone give you that kind of money on that kind of valuation? And I'm not being facetious or negative. But I said, why would they say that you're worth that kind of money? He said, Alan, here's what sold it for us. If you want to store a lot of stuff in the cloud, and it's primarily security data that we store because that's what we're good at. If you want dollar for dollar the cheapest way to store your data in the cloud, we're the best solution in the market. That was it. And so I'm going to tell you something, lesson for entrepreneurs out there.
Yeah.
Mike, he boiled it down, but he boiled it down to one line. One thing, this is what we do better than anyone. And that was enough for a 1.5.
I'm not even questioning. I mean, I think you look at it and you have companies that are on a trajectory to 100 million in ARR, and they're going to get whatever valuation they need.
That's a whole nother.
Right?
That's another one thing. You got 100 million ARR.
But that's right. You're able to
money at you.
Right. You're able to go public probably at a 5 or 6, kind of billion.
Yes.
But again, I'm what I'm trying to grapple with, and maybe this is just
is what do you do with the money? They keep it in the bank.
And this is the Luddite. I remember
are you doing?
Martin McKay telling me, when Twitter first started, right? I didn't understand Twitter, right? Just like it's like Rothman, you're a Luddite, blah, 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 and it's just like, well, I kind of am. Right. And I remember when we used to, kind of build companies for, 2 million or 3 million. Right. And then, and now it's like, if you don't have 100, you're no one. Right. It's
I got a press release today. Security startup coming out of stealth raises 35 million Series A. Series A.
Right.
I said,
so now do you have to do that to compete? So if you're starting up a company now, do you have to do that to compete?
But Mike, I've spoken to a bunch of the CEOs who've raised, these kinds of monies in Series C, D, E, F kind of money. Do you know most of them haven't touched their B and C money?
I know.
The money's So what do you do with that 250 million? Well, they can't invest it. It goes in step CDs.
Wells Fargo is their friend, or Silicon Valley Bank is lending that out to other people and paying them, a point.
1%. Yeah, that's it's there because it makes their balance sheet strong and you said it. It's that rising tide, right? I mean, when Apple made $1 trillion, it was like trumpeted all over the place. I didn't realize it was $2.5 trillion until the other day when Tesla went trillion, and they said, it's. So the whole thing's out of whack.
And to be clear, but these companies, so let's kind of bifurcate a little bit, right? These companies, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, right? Google or Alphabet. These guys are generating close to $100 billion in profit a year.
Yeah.
Right. Apple will do close to
I don't begrudge them. I don't begrudge.
No. So I can get that, right? Because I can do math and say, all right, maybe the valuation on a traditional basis a little bit, but these guys are scaling at a way. And if you look at it, right, Apple had a little bit of supply chain issue. Amazon had a little bit of a supply chain issue. Facebook and Alphabet, not so much, right?
Well,
because they're not so much. They don't have any supply chain issues. And they're still growing the top line at 50 or 60%. Which is insane.
No, I get that.
They're growing Oracle like every quarter. It's crazy. Maybe not Oracle because they keep buying stuff, but they're growing.
But an organic kind of another business growing. That.
It's just right. It's nuts on that front. How does that impact how I build a startup?
You've spoken to VCs.
Yeah.
The connection between public market valuation versus VC valuation was always dotted line at best. There wasn't a direct correlation. Right, because VCs were playing the game of if I bet 1 out of 10 that wins, I did really good, right? And I hit one grand slam.
But Alan, when you're investing $5 million, that's true. When you're investing $100 million, that's a different story.
Yeah, but so you say that, right? Our good friend Chensi, right? Chensi Wang started Rain Capital. I think her first fund.
I don't remember now. I think
25 million.
Yeah.
The second fund is going to be substantially bigger than that. And that's just Chensi. Right? You go look at an Insight Partners. You look at Foundry Group.
That Insight's great. I mean, Just at a totally
people
different
are raising $5 billion with a $B fund.
More Vista.
$20 billion.
Vista and Insight are doing,
And
so
then
I guess it's just... and here's my problem, right? My problem is that I'm just, in some cases, I'm just the old guy who says, get off my lawn, all you new people.
No, I'm going to tell you what you are. Values. You know what you sound like to me? I remember, and you're a Yankee fan. Remember when Catfish, you're not a Yankee fan? I thought deep down you were a Yankee fan.
No.
God's a Yankee fan. We'll talk about that another day.
That's great.
All right, but do you remember when Catfish Hunter got the big money? This is going back. You're my age.
I do.
Catfish Hunter got the big
it was really
money.
the first big free agency thing.
And people were like, and all the old time ball players.
Yeah,
like they split into two camps.
Yeah,
one camp said, "God bless him, more power to him. He deserves it." The other camp were the Mike Rothmans of the world.
No, so let's be clear. I don't begrudge that at all. I'm ecstatic for Mark. I'm ecstatic for Raj. I think this is great in that they're in the right place at the right time to be able to, kind of take advantage.
Capitalize.
I'm ecstatic for George Kurtz, who's an old friend of mine, who, again, all these guys who have done just such a great job building companies and driving, kind of real value for customers, right? And that's transitioned to or translated into, value for themselves and their investors. It's not that at all, right? It's more about just the operational. And if it's a matter of, you know what, Mike, I got $270 million sitting in CDs in the bank. Okay. I get that, right? I remember the time right back in the .bomb days where everybody had an Aeron chair. I just get concerned, me being, kind of if you don't remember history, you're doomed to repeat it. I just remember the Aeron chair phase where, you know what, the chairs were pretty comfortable, but at the end of the day, they didn't help create value for customers. And therefore, at some point, it just went poof. Now, if it's sitting on the balance sheet or if I'm going to invest it in architects, because that's what it costs me to get an architect nowadays, great. No issue with that at all. Don't begrudge that at all. If it's and obviously nobody has fancy offices anymore, but if it's to put espresso machines in everybody's house, as I have my espresso machine over there, I just again, that ends. Yeah,
no, but you know what else I think it is? Look, when COVID started, there were a lot of VCs who went to their portfolio companies and said, cut your spend. Cut your spend. We are about to go into a nuclear winter. Don't spend any money on marketing right now. Don't spend. And it turned out those guys were idiots because that was the time to put the pedal to the metal and spend and grab market share. Right? So guys who went into hibernation probably won't wake up. Guys who spent did. But I think it's the same thing these entrepreneurs are being told right now. Raise the money while you can because things can change.
Yep.
Inflation, the Fed raises interest rates, the market, we go into a bear market, and you want your dry powder to get you through those hard times.
Yep.
And I think that's it.
And these guys have dry powder, and then they have no impetus or catalyst to really require them to do anything besides run their business for the next 10 years.
Okay. We got to wrap this up, but I'm going to ask you one last question. I want to bring for our audience sake, because most of our audience, look, they may aspire to be entrepreneurs. They work for these companies, but you know what? All that money raised doesn't do crap for them. What does it mean to them? Will we see appreciably better security because of all this money flooding in there?
No. Because the problem is not one of number of companies or number of technologies, right? The problem is one of complexity, right? The problem is one of, not being able to secure your software supply chain or just the components that we're using nowadays or, how at the day job, obviously it's Securosis. We are doing a significant number of, I don't even want to call them DevSecOps, but it's really application security program work for folks that are moving into this new world because they don't know what the hell they're doing, right? So when we sit there and go, does Devo having, a crap ton of money help them? Well, sure, it helps them store their data and be able to, figure out from a telemetry standpoint, is it going to solve the fundamental issue that we're all facing as we're moving into this new world? I don't think so. Right. So I think that we get, kind of more scalable solutions. I don't know that we solve the problem, and again, I'm not saying it's not progress, right? Because when we look back from where we were 10 years ago, right? Huge progress. Progress on almost all fronts, which none of us really take an opportunity to really focus on at any given time because we're all focused on the next thing that's going to kill us, justifiably because it can kill us. But we have made significant progress, I think, in a lot of fronts. Is it going to solve the problem? Probably not, because I don't know that there is an answer to the problem. I think this is just the cat and mouse game. We're on the, whatever Chris Hoff's, hamster wheel of pain, or maybe that was Andy Jaquitz. I forget. It's one of those, old folks that don't show up in the public sphere too much anymore. Maybe we'll go. Maybe I'll go find them. I think I'm going to go find them.
I got an idea for that. But here's the bottom line. For our audience out there, if this money isn't helping them with better solutions,
that's right.
Except for the rich get richer kind of people at the top of the thing. That to me is that says it all, right? But we are. Let's not be a downer Debbie.
No.
We are getting better.
We have made a lot of progress. A lot of progress, and we should recognize that.
I'm going to be optimistic. anytime security gets in a spotlight, and that includes a spotlight because they raise money, it's not a bad thing.
No. Alan, so it's a real business now, and that's exciting for us.
And that's exactly what it is.
When it wasn't
always recognized as.
That's right.
You're right. Hey, man, I'm running out. Mike, we're going to do more. We'll be in touch. Mike Rothman, Sclerosis. Well, it's actually Firemon. Is it still Disrupt Ops at Firemon?
Disrupt Ops is a Firemon company. Yeah. Disrupt Ops is a Firemon company.
Go check them out. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Bye-bye.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, Devsecops, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Hope you enjoyed that conversation between Alan and Mike. Next up, we have a conversation between Alan and Antoine Chigori, who is the field CTO at Kyndryl. Kyndryl recently announced a spate of global industry leaders who have signed on with the organization to help them with their digital transformation processes and transforming their IT environments. Some big names here. We've got Dow, Pitney Bowes, Michelin, and others, and they're looking at all things including AI, 5G, edge computing, hybrid cloud, and security, and all with the sole purpose of helping organizations tackle their most pressing business issues in modern ways. It is a great conversation, so let's go ahead and roll it now.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, welcome to another segment here on Techstrong TV. One of the nice things about doing this Techstrong TV thing is I get to speak to people on the day their companies go public. And, like they say about buying a boat, the best 2 days of owning a boat, the day you buy it, the day you sell it. There are very few days as exhilarating as the day you get listed on a public exchange and it's a company you work for. Whether you are a founder, an executive, or you just work there, the fact that this being that you gave life or helped give life to in some way is now listed on a public stock exchange, and the public at large are trading dollars and cents and setting the price of your stock based upon your performance. It's a great feeling, and it's a congratulations. I want to congratulate our guest, Antoine Chigori. If I didn't say it right, I apologize, but I think I got it. Antoine, welcome to Techstrong TV.
Thanks, Alan. Great opportunity to be with you today. And I appreciate the good wishes, too. Yeah, it's an exciting day.
I was going to say congratulations to you and the whole team at Kyndryl, which I don't think I mentioned before. So, and that's a great jump off. Antoine, if you wouldn't mind, let's give I think our audience, probably maybe you've heard the name Kyndryl. But let's give them the background. What's Kyndryl? Who is Kyndryl? Where does it come from? And maybe a little bit of your background as well.
Sure, sounds great. So I think it probably starts out with the easy part of the origin, and that's IBM. So very much a part of IBM, and it's one of its major divisions. IBM, and at least in this context, this conversation, had a business division and a tech division. I think the acronyms were GBS and GTS. We're basically a spinoff around the majority of that GTS business. So the managed infrastructure services, the managed operations, the services that they had provided around the enterprise systems, the software, and the support for the clients across the IBM client base. And so probably, I think in third quarter last year, they announced the intent to spin off that part of the business, so GTS or managed infrastructure. And, basically for the last, I think what we're into it now, almost a year, or a little over a year now, this is basically what we've started to kind of launch in to start on our own. So basically taking on all of the infrastructure services, taking on managed operations, managed services, project service and implementation, as well as a lot of the tooling support for cloud migrations and app services.
Yep. I mean, and let's be clear, right? It's the law of big numbers a little bit. IBM's a huge company. When we talk about, splitting off GTS,
sure,
this isn't your average startup where you start with zero, right? When we look at the roster of customers, I mean, these are world-leading organizations that have depended on GTS and now Kyndryl for mission critical, not just, the story, everyone has something in the cloud, but 90% of it's not mission critical, right?
I understand.
But they've depended on IBM and now Kyndryl for mission critical technology services for decades in some cases.
Yeah, very, very, very good point. I definitely could take your lead on this one. So we're about, as a part of the spinoff, we're about 20% or so of the operating company, and the clients that we're supporting. So we're coming in, give or take, an $18 billion revenue company, just under 90,000 employees, operations in over 60 countries, and we directly support over 75 or 78, I think, of the Fortune 100. So in those core critical operations. And to put it in context that keeps my hairline very far back, we're handling, almost 50% of industrial transportation services, so over 60% of the assets under management across the globe on the banking sector. So we're very much a heart of, and that's one of our phrases that we talk about a lot, we're very much at the heart of our clients' businesses in core and operations. So yeah, we are definitely a really large startup, kind of coming to market in that scenario.
Absolutely.
Great reference.
Yeah. I mean, look, and if you ever speak to anyone over at AWS, they always had this kind of mentality, that startup mentality. And they said if they ever lost that startup mentality, they'd lose their edge. With Kyndryl, it's almost opposite, right? You're a startup, but a big startup. You had a large customer base and business to come out with, but nevertheless, it's still a startup in many ways as it gets spun out here, right? As a standalone unit, there was a relationship between GTS and GBS. I imagine there still will be relationship, a different relationship, but still a relationship. Antoine, we didn't talk about your background though, if you don't mind, just.
Yeah, I apologize.
Our audience. No, don't apologize.
It's always the hardest thing to talk about is yourself, right? So I think, so I'm definitely getting old in my seat, but I'm about a little over 28 years in the tech and tech service sector, heavy financial services. So, kind of going back to when dinosaurs roamed the earth, came out, did a lot of work on some DoD work on satellite communications, and then somehow found my way into trading at Instinet. So started doing trading system interface development. And if I want to date myself, I was working on PDP 1170s, SX11 software. Wow, that hurts saying that word.
That hurt. Well, no, you're in good company here. Don't worry.
And then, kind of stay in that space. That was heavy brokerage, electronic brokerage, got into retail, self-clearing, got that into the exchange space. So did trading system development, exchanges, market data servicing, did a lot of work in that space, and stayed in the exchange space between the American Stock Exchange, the New York Stock Exchange, and London Stock Exchange. LSE probably was kind of like the penultimate and my exit out of that process. I became the chief operating officer of the LSE, so I managed all clearing, trading. So not only did you have to, it's kind of, my joke is, it took DevOps, right, to the whole new meeting. I took it from cradle to grave, right?
Yes, you did.
From the trading system all the way to how the actual trader traded it, came back and complained. So I had the entire full.
Yeah, but you know what? Sometimes who has that perspective, right?
True.
That's a great.
And if it wasn't recorded, sir, I can show you plenty of scars on my hindquarters. And then,
you know what? Yeah, I think we all have those, exactly. And so At Kyndryl, what's kind of your title now? What's your position there?
So I'm the group CTO. So I've been honored with the responsibility to help bring all of not only the technology together, but all the technical teams strategically together to help not only position our product, but our new value proposition to our clients. Yep. And this is very much part of the great journey we're on.
And it's that new value prop that I want to focus in on, if it's okay, Antoine. You know, timing is everything in life, as I'm sure we've both been around the block, and you learn this the hard way sometimes. But timing is everything. You've got this company that publicly listed now that was just spun off less than a year ago, but nevertheless an 800-pound gorilla in terms of a customer base, experience, know-how, right, and market reach. At the same time, you have a world where digital transformation has, well, it's become an inevitable partner for almost every organization, large and small, that wants to thrive in this post-COVID world. What a great confluence, right? Or like a perfect storm of things coming together here. I look at it as, wow, what a great opportunity is in front of Kyndryl here. Right? Yeah. I'm reading the press release, household names. We know the household names that everyone knows, as you mentioned, 60% of this, 70% of global banking, etc. Let's talk about the opportunity. Where do you see the opportunity?
Yeah, it's funny. I probably gave a couple of lenses on the answer. The first one is, and it's going to sound funny, is educating as much as anything else our current clients. So, and I can kind of hopefully do this in a way that's understandable. So on the one hand, being a part of IBM, we're very much locked into how we were delivering services within their portfolio. We were selling Red Hat services, selling and building on SoftLayer, IBM Cloud, and those scenarios. At the same token, we had to help our clients become capable for workload portability across other hyperscalers, but it was never really front and center at the front stage, if you want to put it in that context. So the first one is demonstrating to people where we have an opportunity, since we have developed the IP and expertise for true workload portability, looking at managing workloads across hyperscalers, optimizing, their operating environments, not just build in the provision, but we deploy, we optimize, we redeploy. So a lot of great things happening in that space. And then the other thing that, and it sounds like an education with our clients first, is also exposing what we've done with our own IP. So again, people, when they hear managed infrastructure, they thought we were doing the Z platforms. I call them zips, the Z, the IVP platforms, and we're basically mainframe junkies. Sorry, that's really, it's a part of the business. It's a very strong part. It runs a tremendous amount of business in the banking, the insurance sector, and the health sector. But over half of our applied IP, our patents are in AI and data, and how we start to apply that type of experience set to the client. And I like your confluence and I like your convergence example. So a lot of the things we're doing now is we've now opened up, and now we're directly partnering with other hyperscalers. We're creating a better enablement journey message. So a lot of that value proposition that you hit it to is how we help close the gap for not only going through that planning process, but how do we actually keep achieving that evolution of your workloads? How do we continue to try and cloud enable or mobilize a lot of the client solutions that they have in the market? And that's what we really started to do. And the value proposition that really is starting to hit home for a lot of our clients is a new form of independence. So now we're in a different conversation. Now we're seeing what and who they want to partner with and how we can be better integrator. So the interesting thing is I kind of cover 4 areas, and I can kind of pause at that one. The first one is most people do what they expected us to do. We are an integrator. We're an implementer, and we're an operator. I can't hide behind that. But we're also the innovator too. So how do we bring that to them in that life cycle? And then how do we give the derivative values beneath it? So as I'm growing that enablement kind of conversation about this modernization or digitization work that we're working on with our clients today, we now can expose the insights that we've been working on. So we've been building metadata. We have one of the world's largest operational data lakes on metadata, on patterns of our clients' operating environments. So as they start to migrate workloads, as they start to integrate different automation capabilities, we actually have patterns to model against. So if we're trying to maintain that stability, that scalability, and the operational certainty, we provide the belt and suspenders to support a lot of the transition and transformation work.
Excellent. You know, Anton, look, I remember back, and I'm sure you remember too, when AT&T spun off like Lucent and Avaya, and, you know, there were several spin-offs coming out of there. And it's like, you know, when they first start off, those corporate bonds run deep. But over time, you know, evolution takes place, right? It's like putting a species on an island and they develop into a new species. In the case of Kyndryl, I think you hit it. As an integrator, your partners, your customers are going to look to you for best of breed solutions. It may not always be the Red Hat, right? Yeah. There's other mainframe software. There's only one mainframe platform, right? Z. Right. Yeah. But there's other mainframe software providers, God knows, right? Yeah. Not a lot, to tell you the truth, but there are, you know, several. And there are lots of solutions out in the marketplace here. In your role as kind of, you know, field CTO here and everything, how do you weigh that? Or, you know, and not just you personally, but you in your position in Kyndryl in delivering best of breed, because I'm sure at the end of the day, your interest is deliver best of breed solutions to this, you know, stellar blue chip base of customers.
You know, it's funny. You put it perfectly on. When I start to when we started this work, and I've been here, you know, about 3.5 months, right? So obviously you can tell I'm outside of my shirt and my tie, I'm really blue, right? So wow, that joke's gonna get old soon, but it felt good saying it. So
we get it.
But you know, when we start to look at our portfolio, our capabilities, the first one is, how do we bring that and start to open it up to the client base? And that gets into, I know people are overusing the word, but how do we build the right ecosystem or the right network platform? So help take the complexity out of our client's acquisition partner or partner process to integrate into their operations. So the work we're doing around the strategic platform build is really just creating that capability. Not only, first off, it's building the environment for the best of breed to come in. So how do we make sure we have natural or native integration work as offering embedded services to our client through our existing operating model or existing platforms that we're operating for them? So we're giving them basically an easier method to invite their vendors into the door or into their businesses to help them modernize. And then we get into the conversation a bit about how do we actually, not going to say pick, but we actually working with our clients to find the most complementary service providers where they're looking at specialty in regard to optimizing, whether it's, again, Z workloads, right, or what's actually happening, or if they want to deprecate services from some of the mainframe services and bring that more into container opportunities, right, or native development around Kate's environments. We are basically bringing those people in now naturally. So a lot of that work is building the ecosystem for us as a part of the engine, right? Help deliver for the client. And then how do we then literally start to distribute that to the environments or our clients' operating environments? So expose that into their model. So it's really taking a very, I'm going to say a wholesale view on building that supermarket concept, right? So how do I make sure what they need is on the shelf? How do I deliver it in an easy way? How do I make sure they don't need to modify into their own APIs? They don't need to write native description languages. How do we provide that seamlessly to them? And then we become naturally a part of their op process and their dev process.
So let me run with your supermarket analogy for a minute. So one of the keys to the supermarket business is what products do you put at eye level?
Perfect.
Right?
Yeah.
How do you go about doing that here?
Yeah, it's funny. I love to tell you that the journey map's done, but what we've tried to do is make sure that the partners with the deepest feature set and the easiest integration model are the ones we're putting at eye level and making sure that it's, well, I'm going to take the analogy one step further. If you don't want to laugh at me in a minute, right after we're done, you can laugh at me. It's kind of like the fully prepared meal section versus the ingredient section. So it's like, so a lot of the clients, especially on the mid-size enterprise, mid-large size enterprises, they need a lot more of that opportunity in regard to their planning process and how they can see. It's almost like the plug and play, but also test and run. Is this going to actually complement my services in a certain way? So we've definitely started to initially go after, in a good way, the right partnerships around, 3 of the largest hyperscalers. We've done a lot around, I'll say, at least so far, 2 of the largest cloud data service providers, just to make sure that we have that ready package as an available service to them, and then again, offering it within our menu of services. But we can still do direct proxy services around data, but there's a better opportunity for what I call that plug and play capability.
Agreed. Very cool. Antoine, it's supposed to be a 15-minute interview. We're way over already, but you know what? I want to wish you and the whole Kyndryl team really the best of success here. As I said, it is going to be interesting over the months and years ahead to see, how this diverges from the path where it was before, or maybe, I don't think it'll stick to that path. I think you guys you're going to chart your own course, depending on what the market wants and needs and what your customers say. But for people out here looking and saying, you know what, I'd like to talk to these folks. I'd like to, talk to I think we could use some help. I like the fresh ideas, a new approach. What's the best way to interact?
Yeah, I mean, for us, one is direct engagement. We have a tremendous sales force that's operating in the operating environment. We're still partnered with IBM as well, too. So it's not like there's not a true relationship. So we're available both in that capacity. But I think those are the best channels that we start to interact with. And then we're definitely still engaged with different trade groups and opportunities around that as well. So what's actually
happening? Partners? Antoine, what about folks who say, you know what, they're not IBM now. Maybe they would look at my solution as part of their portfolio. We think we have a best in class. We think we have something people want. What's the best way to engage with you there?
Yeah, so we have and I guess we can, I can provide data to you as well. We have a strategic, I'll say partnering group that's actually helping to build that roster. So the inventory on the shelves, right, that we talked about earlier. And a gentleman named Stephen Leonard. So we can definitely provide some of the details, for your
We'll try to get that in the notes on this. That's great, man. Antoine, again, congratulations. Thanks for coming on Techstrong TV
Great
as
fun.
well.
I appreciate it.
Hey, man, you look good in a tie. Every once in a while, it's good to get dressed up to remember what we used to do.
Hey, I'm going to cut it off as soon as we're done. Don't worry.
I know how that goes. But still, every once in a while, I like to get dressed up. It's always bad. It's when you got to do it every day that it starts to be a drag. But anyway, man, congratulations and good luck.
Thanks, brother. Talk to you soon. Great day.
All right. Bye-bye. Antoine Chigori, CTO, Kyndryl, here on Techstrong TV. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
All right, welcome back. Next up, we've got the Haunted Hacker podcast. In this one, Mike Jones speaks. It's a part 2 of a 2-part conversation that he speaks, and Mike Jones The host speaks with Blacks in Cybersecurity Group, including Michaela Barnett, who is the senior analyst at Accenture Federal Services and founder and CEO of Blacks in Cybersecurity, and other members, including Alexandria Barnett, Nico Smith, and Garrison Best. It is a great podcast, great conversation between these folks. I highly recommend you check it out. So let's roll it now.
Given the fact that you guys do all of these things and it keeps you busy and you guys have so many events every year, how do you guys balance your time between BIC and personal lives? Tell me, especially Nico. Nico, tell me how you do that, because I'm interested.
Time is a man-made construct. That's about where I'll put it. So if anyone has seen me talk, on my Who Am I slide, I have at the top, father of two, right? This is my favorite, my most treasured job in the world. So looking at the ability to organize and kind of time manage, really has to sink. And I think it speaks very deeply to this idea that I think people are coming around to, which is, cybersecurity as a lifestyle, and you have to have the passion to do so. And because I care so much, and I'm so excited about being part of an organization like BIC and being able to reach out and touch so many people and kind of be the thing that you needed but wasn't around, is kind of what drives it. So we have 24 hours in a day. And I use roughly, and I think Garrison or Michaela can probably attest, I use about 21 to 22 of those hours specifically on developing new concepts or new opportunities for, not only for BIC, but coming up with innovative ways. And before I hop off, just going back to your statement about Michaela being a really amazing CEO, an amazing leader. I have to agree with Garrison and Alex in that way, where being able to be granted the latitude and the trust from your leadership is one of the things that makes the work not work, if that makes sense. Absolutely. So, and that brings me to Michaela. So, we've heard about how you guys operate as a group and kind of what brought you into cyber. What were some of the hurdles and maybe some of the difficult things about forming a group, and how did you overcome it?
Okay. Unfortunately, there wasn't a whole lot of diversity in the space before we kind of started showing up. So that definitely was a contributing aspect. People not necessarily being used to seeing people with different backgrounds or people that didn't look like them in a space where it was mostly homogenous. So that has its own difficulties as far as, trying to come across as, hey, we're here to also engage in the same things. There were a few people who may not have been as kind, whether they were behind the screen via the internet or maybe to our faces at times. But I think the important thing to focus on is that with the events that transpired last summer, people were able to see our community in a different light, and they were able to kind of empathize with our past as well as where we're going. So it made for an interesting transition from people not necessarily being used to our community being present to welcoming our community and helping themselves be better allies, as well as understanding what we were there to do.
That's pretty awesome. I would definitely like to help you guys out in any way that I can. So, after the show or whatever, shoot me an email, let me know how I can contribute and help you guys along, because I really appreciate and honor what you guys do. I think it's really awesome. And you're right. Sometimes it's hard starting a group, and not just because the organization and where you want to go and the vision and the things you take on. I know for me, Michaela, it's really difficult because I balance the group, I balance the podcast, I balance public speaking, working, consulting. It just, I was talking to Gerald Ozier yesterday about this and that burnout factor, and being too overwhelmed. And I think that's one of the pitfalls for having so much passion is sometimes you take that passion and you run yourself into the ground. And I've been known to run myself ragged to the point where I need to take 2 days and just sleep. So yeah, building groups and building relationships is very important. But you're always going to have those people that have something negative to say or try to stand in your way. And I see that a lot on the internet in general. The trolls, just don't feed the trolls, because the more you feed them, the more they'll come back. But yeah, it is difficult to do that. And it's difficult to start it and to keep it going. But with the numbers and with your organization and Michaela's leadership and the personalities you have here on this podcast, I mean, that's a mix for success. So in the future, where would you guys like to see BIC go? I mean, are you planning on making this like a global type movement to where, you have millions and millions of members, or, where do you see this in 3 or 4 years from now?
Well, I'll jump in first. I know everybody else probably has some things, but we're currently actually pretty global right now. So we actually have a spinning up our BIC Africa entity, and we're working on our BIC Europe. So it's basically the same thing that we're doing here, but we're allowing it to those organizations to basically run freely and host their own conferences and meetups and the same makeup that we have in the United States. But I would definitely love to see it being a worldwide thing. We're not here to hold anybody back. We're here to help. And any person of color that wants any type of needs any resources or wants to help or wants to get there, join our. We have a speaker development program. We have different development programs. I mean, we have a lot of stuff that we're just trying to give back, because if we can get more people involved in cybersecurity, it helps all of us. It's tons of jobs out there, and the more people we can get in those spaces, it's helping us. So we're not trying to hold any information back, and we're trying to just make sure that we give our resources and our time out. So yeah, I would love for it to be a huge global thing. And I made a joke that I really wish that one day people can come out of college and come from HBCU or come from any school and they say, hey, I'm in cybersecurity, and everybody knows like, oh, you got to hit up BIC, you got to talk to them first to see, they have jobs, they have internships and everything. That's what I'm hoping for, because I want to make sure that we're helping out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Michaela, where do you see it going in the next 3 or 4 years? Where would you like it to go?
Yes, definitely piggybacking off what Garrison had said. I'd like it to be obviously more global and more tied into the cyber communities that are co-developing within our big groups. So I know there's a whole different independent cyber culture in Africa. So I'd really like to see BIC Africa expand and contribute to that community. I know that's different from Europe and Asia and the other places that we're expanding. So definitely emphasizing that global expansion. I'd also like to see us cultivate more capture the flag teams at HBCUs and at high schools, so that people can learn to love the game like we do and contribute to that as far as maker and hacker spaces.
Yeah, awesome. Speaking of Africa, you guys should probably touch base with Johnny Long. Johnny Long has Hackers for Charity, and he spent a lot of time in Africa, him and his wife, helping bring technology to different places within Africa. And he's got a lot of great stories. I think he still lives in Maryland, I believe. But I'll see if I can't get you guys hooked up with him. There's a lot of great people who are bringing technology to those other countries. And, the more people that we can supply that technology to, the better off we'll be. Because my idea is that, there are a lot of places that have internet, but parents can't afford to send the kids to school. They don't have exposure to cybersecurity. They don't have friends that are into it, and it makes things difficult. And those are some brilliant minds that probably could be movers and shakers within cybersecurity. And I think the more that we can reach out to those type of people and give them the tools that they need, our world in general will be a better place. So, Alex, tell me where you would like it to go.
Not forgetting to unmute. Yes. As someone I'm looking at our bigger picture, I'd love to see us continue to grow. I'm very excited to go to our big Africa conferences, speaking those into existence, as I know they're going to come through. So that'll be an amazing experience. I'm excited to see us continue to partner, just like you've been saying with Tanisha and Black Girls Hack, one of our partners. I'd love to continue to consider new partnerships in the future, just so we can continue to spread our word out, as well as get as many resources to our kiddos, our CLADP program, as well as our newer community members as soon as possible to get them up and running, as that's one of my personal passions as a newcomer as well. So I'd love to see that for BIC.
Right on. Nika, what about you? World dominance, or where are we going with that?
Absolute world dominance. So Michaela touched a little bit on kind of where I'd like to see us go, and that's in the CTF realm, as it's one of the best ways for people like us to maintain or to develop skill sets. But more to the point, I'd like to see more Black content creators, so CTF developers, and that's more inside of the wheelhouse and where I'd like to see BIC kind of expand, as well as ownership of IP spaces and really hosting and owning the very infrastructure that we're leveraging in order to execute the different things. So just watching that just grow as quickly as possible, as well as the people, the men and women that are supporting those type of initiatives.
Awesome. I don't know if you know Alton from Vonahai.io. It's an automated pen testing platform. They were one of our early sponsors for the podcast, and he's got an interesting platform that helps, kind of automate pen testing and write and build reports. He'd be another great asset to talk to. Really good guy. But yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to branch out in cybersecurity. And I think that for me, one of my biggest hurdles was going out and putting myself out there. That was the hardest part, walking up onto a stage for the first time. I have neurodiversity and doing a podcast and being public and being in front of people is a huge step. And I like the fact that you guys have a speaker program to teach people how to do public speaking and make themselves more confident in getting out there and sharing. Because I think one of the big downfalls that we have in the industry, there's so many brilliant people, but we only hear from a select few repetitively. It'd be nice to have more speakers and more people share what they've gone through in cybersecurity and be accepted in the community. Because I feel like, like I said, I feel like there's a very small percentage of the people who actually get their voices heard on a routine basis. And it's kind of why I built the podcast, was to give people a chance to tell their story and to get their word out and help other people. Because I didn't have that when I started. I got kind of thrown onto a stage in Scotland in front of like 40 people. And to me, that was a huge crowd. And then last week I went, so my career started out with 40 people in a college classroom in Scotland back in 2018. And just last week, I was in front of 1,000 people all over the world. So, I mean, there are so many avenues and so many opportunities. And as long as you believe in yourself and you have the confidence and you have the support, I mean, there's no telling where you can go. So I really like that about the groups that you guys build and what you have going on. I mean, I think it's really genuine. So tell me, Nico, what's the hardest part about teaching red teaming to people who don't know about red teaming? So I know for me that sometimes that's a dilemma. Tell me how you approach that.
So the best way that I could explain it is I approach it as if I'm teaching a different language. Mm-hmm. So because it definitely is pedagogically. When we start talking about what's necessary in order to solve the problems, it comes from an array of different, there is no one way. And sometimes that's a really great thing, and sometimes it's a bad thing because the repeatability aspect that people are accustomed to seeing. So when some of the hardships come from lack of exposure or confidence, as some people have spoken to, and to that, one of the things that I do to try and really help people who are trying to learn how to CTF or how to get shell or something like that. One, I research a lot, and two, I think Platt Parliament of Poning did a talk. The leader or the founder did a talk at RSA a couple years ago about how to develop great hackers, and just really pulling from my experiences and really putting everything that I have into the work is what I've done to try and overcome some of those problems. But as far as the community that we're facing, I think a large part of our hardships always lie inside of lack of access. Mm-hmm. And so I try and tear down as many. So that goes back to the whole /24 purchase and having infrastructure that translates to now you don't have to have a computer to participate. I can provide that to you. So that a labor of love.
Awesome. So do you guys have, what kind of sponsorship do you guys have? How do you keep the group going, Michaela? What kind of things do you do to help, I guess, build surplus so that you can give this stuff back to the community?
Right. So first and foremost, we like to partner and work with those who are in the hacker and maker space. So definitely want to talk to and collaborate with communities like Black Girls Hack, Black Girls in Cyber, Empower Cyber, and other organizations. So that's our first kind of rung of contributing and building community. Secondly, we like to find organizations that align with our ideals and our philosophy as far as hands-on learning and connecting with the community and the culture. So we are working with organizations such as Amazon Web Services, Palo Alto, SYNAC, and hopefully building out our different programs in collaboration with them, as well as helping fulfill some of their open roles. So we definitely, all in all, like to just collaborate with the community and companies that support our community efforts.
Awesome. Yeah. When we first started, one of the things I did was set up donations because I didn't want to sell product. I just wanted to give back. But one of the dilemmas I found was the ability to give back requires funds. Without sponsorship, you're kind of stuck. We didn't have sponsorships when we first started, so we just set up a Patreon and started generating, money to keep things going so I could pay for the Zoom, so we could get equipment, stuff like that. And, of course, we had the Discord. But I think, eventually I'd like to see our group actually be able to stand on its own without having to go out and get sponsorship or donations. And the magazine was one of those first steps, getting that out there and being able to publish that and hopefully eventually getting it into some sort of print model. So getting your word out, I know you guys do public speaking. I know that you're involved with other groups. How else do you guys get your word out? I guess that's pointed more towards Alex as far as, what are the avenues and venues that you get the word out about BIC?
Well, ultimately, our community is one of our fastest spreaders of news. I mean, on that, not just within our Discord community, our LinkedIn community, and then overall on YouTube, that's upwards of maybe 17 to 18,000 people as we put all that together. So our community is strong, very much so community first in that aspect. But when it comes down to our public relations and strategy in regards to that, we often with our partners, but also within publications, going on podcasts and appearances such as this, as well as uploading a lot of what we do on YouTube and our conferences, as well as their talks and whatnot that generate a lot of viewers, but also a lot of interest in our community as well. So ultimately community driven first, but then as well, having appearances like this really help spread the word about BIC.
Yeah, absolutely. So this podcast will be shown on Techstrong TV at some point, and it'll be played 3 times in 1 week, and they have roughly something like 10,000 viewers. So hopefully that'll help generate more for you guys. So I always like to ask my guests, if there was one thing that you could change about the cybersecurity industry and one of your passions that you really want to change that's not going so well, what would it be? And I'll go ahead and start with Nico first.
I would say that cybersecurity as a whole, from the defense and even the offensive side, needs a new branding campaign, needs a new ad campaign. Because right now there's a weird preference over, hey, I want to get my OSCP. I want to be offensive, right? And that's okay. I'm not bashing that. But I think in that we start to lose the value that blue team brings to the table. And the fact that if I am red teaming for a company, I'm actually blue teaming for them, right? So I think through more honest dialogue about understanding how different exploits occur inside of networks will help people more visualize the reason why we need a better budget for cybersecurity, and that all automated solutions are not the way, and ultimately that the skill sets that are presented the skill sets required to be successful in cybersecurity aren't always captured underneath the umbrella of computer science. It could be from a person with a fine arts degree. Wink, wink. So
who has that?
That's me.
Nice.
So I do see the value in those things, but I think that a little bit more honest dialect in that way. And I think the more that we have these non-standard thinkings or thinkers inside these spaces, then opens up that neurodiversity that we're always looking for. And that in turn opens up the door for actual diversity within our community.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you brought up a good point about red teaming and blue teaming. So, the industry as a whole kind of looks at people coming in industry. The first thing I hear from all the kids is I want to be a hacker. Next question is how much do you make? So those two factors alone drive me nuts. And what I tell people, what I tell my analysts on my MDR team is that in order to be good at either side, it doesn't matter which side you pick, but you've got to know both sides. If you don't know how to hack and you don't know what you're looking at, you can't defend it. And Sun Tzu said it best, the only way to beat your enemy is to know your enemy and become your enemy. So I rely pretty heavily on that. And I'm glad you touched on the blue team versus red team aspect of it, because that's always been, the issue. And nobody wants to be blue team because they want to be that, Hollywood genre of the hacker behind the dark screen or whatever. Garrison, what about you? What would you like to change about cybersecurity industry as a whole?
I'm going to piggyback with what Sock said. I'm just looking for people to not overlook it and to make sure, like, no matter what you're involved in, you might have a skill that can be used in cybersecurity, and utilizing what you're good at. Every time I talk to someone, I always tell them, like, find out what you're passionate about, and then research that passion against cybersecurity and see what you can find, because everybody wants to be happy when they're working, right? And you don't want to just be going to work and be like, oh, I gotta pay this bill, so I gotta be here. So, but if you find something you're passionate about, you wake up happy and you know that, hey, I'm doing something to either help somebody or doing something that I appreciate. So I just hope more people just think about, like, hey, like, if I'm interested in it, if it's something that I think that I might be good at, like, don't turn away from it because you think that you might not have the skills for it. Like, do your research and make sure you put the effort in, and then you can find out if it's for you or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And Michaela, what about you? What would you like to see change about cybersecurity as an industry?
I think just like everyone else kind of touched on, I'd like to see more emphasis on that neurodiversity, because that does bring the diversity as well as help connect dots more previously seen before. And with our recent season of breaches and incidents, I do think that having more diverse backgrounds and more diverse perspectives would definitely be a great play on everyone's part. With that, I think communication and as well as training of staff members and team members on basic cybersecurity hygiene and anything they can do to help further their own personal cybersecurity skills, whether that is pivoting to another role, or even just having better personal security with 2FA or stronger passwords and different other fundamentals. I think that's really important and definitely needs to be more circulated, spoken about, and just overall distributed amongst our community.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The whole cybersecurity being a lifestyle that Nico touched on earlier. I think because it's a passion and because we enjoy what we do, it becomes part of who we are. And you're right, Garrison, you're totally right. You have to enjoy what you do, and I love what I do. And I think that's what keeps me doing it 24 hours a day and just wear myself out, is the fact that passion never goes anywhere. I've been known to stay up until like 2 or 3 in the morning until I get this exploit to work. And sometimes that passion drives you, and it makes me happy to be able to go to work. Now, I will say the only time I do dread a phone call is when someone calls about an IR, because I know for the next 4 days I'm not going to sleep and it's just going to be chaos. And I don't deal with chaos very well. So we're at the end of the hour. Do you guys have any questions for me or for the group? I'll open it up to you guys, and if you have any questions, shoot.
I have one.
Sure.
What is your most fulfilling thing about doing this podcast? Like what makes you, continue to do it? And
And just meeting people like you guys, forming new relationships, exchanging ideas from different points of view. And I told Gerald Ozier yesterday, I said, I learned something new from every guest I have. And I challenge myself, if there's somebody out there that has an advanced degree or are very deep in what they do, I may not know anything about what they do or their job, but an hour sitting down with them and talking to them and building that relationship, I learn something every time. So that's my passion. That and working with kids, I think is really big. We've had a lot of young kids join our group and listen to the podcast. I guess the median age for the podcast is ages 15 to 23. So we're reaching that target audience that we wanted to. And then we're, reaching the professionals and the old timers too. But that's a good question. And, I appreciate that, because to me, cybersecurity and just life in general is about relationships. And, every time I meet a guest, they become one of my new best friends. So that's the way I look at it. Any other questions?
I have one.
Mm-hmm.
As you're seeking to grow talent within your organization or even previous organizations, what's something that you can pass on to us as kind of a nugget or a takeaway as we reach out to try and mature young cyber professionals?
So one thing I try not to do, and this goes back as long as I can remember in my life, is I try not to judge people based on certifications or degrees. To me, certifications are important to get that base knowledge or whatever, but it's a test, and it's a very limited test. I like to see the way people's minds work. Creativity is huge to me. You had a fine arts degree. I went to art school as well. And I think in red teaming and penetration testing, you have to have a level of creativity in order to do those functions. So what I do is I look at how they communicate, how their mind works, and how I came up with that theory about creativity and how the mind works, and suitable for which position in cyber, is I went to Redmond, Washington in 2005 and interviewed for Microsoft. And I have to tell you, in 2005, it was a week-long interview, and there were no technical questions at all. The very first interview I had, I sat in a room, and it was cluttered with stuff in this woman's office. And she says, pick an object in the room, and, I'm thinking of an object in the room, and you ask the least amount of questions it takes to figure out what the object is that I'm thinking of. So it's just deductive reasoning, and just little things like that. That for lunch they said, what's your favorite food? And I said, well, since I'm from Texas, I love steak and potatoes or whatever. So they take me to a vegan restaurant. And so it was all just a mind game. They wanted to see how you functioned, how you communicated, the way that you as a person is constructed. So I would say, don't rely so heavily on people's backgrounds, whether it be in cyber or IT. because everybody has something to contribute. And I think when we become exclusive and we don't include everybody, we minimize and reduce the way that we fight risk, because it takes everybody's mindset in order to fight a problem. And I'm really a big advocate for women in cyber as well. And I think that, we all think differently. And I think to make a balanced team and, a good relationship is you have to have the male and female on the team to look at it from different points of view. When you close your blinders and you hire nothing but guys, you hire nothing but girls, you always lack something. And you see it all over the place. And those teams don't stay together. They don't have that cohesiveness. So I try to mix in a little bit of everything, but I don't shut my eyes when it comes to, oh, well, you don't have the right cert, I can't help you. Or, when someone comes to me and says, well, I don't really know what I want to do in cyber, then I look at what they've done in the past. Were you a doctor? Were you in the military? And relate that to cyber. That's a good question. And, hopefully, more people will think that way, because I know that there's some organizations that if you have something in your past, like I do, they keep you from having a job. Or, if you don't have that degree or, you don't know the right people, then they count you out. And I hate that about the industry. Michaela, do you have anything for me?
I guess on the lighter side, what do you like to do outside of your podcast and working in cyber?
Well, so like socks, I don't have a lot of that time. Like you said, there's 24 hours in a day, and I'm not sure exactly how many hours I can actually say that I'm free. But I do enjoy content creation. I actually started doing screenplays for Alyssa Knight and her media company, doing screenplays and doing content for her events. And I think, to me, that was something I'd never tried before. And I was terrified. After the podcast, she called me. She said, hey, I want you to be a writer on my team and help write these short films. And I was like, I don't know anything about film and I have no idea how to write. So you probably asked the wrong person, but I challenged myself. I was like, here's this, top of the industry person that wants me to help them. And I was like, absolutely, and jumped right in. And I learned something new, and I actually really enjoy it. That, and I do fly fishing. I love music. I used to like to travel until the U.S. decided they didn't want me to travel anymore. But other than that, I did some professional boxing back in the day. Can't do that anymore because I'm a little bit too old. But yeah, I fought in Vegas in 2001, and that was another thing that I put myself out there and just tried, and was actually halfway decent at it. But yeah, it's important to have hobbies outside of what we do. But like Nico said, this is my passion, and I'm always building something with the Raspberry Pi, or building a retro arcade, or setting up VMs to hack. Just constantly doing something. So yeah, that's my fun time. So what little I get. But I appreciate the questions. Any last words before we go? Anything you want to shoot out there to people listening, or get the word out about something specific? Go for it.
Well, I just want to shout out my awesome team. I know you guys talked a little bit about me, but I really couldn't be the leader that I am today without my team. So Nico, Garrison, not Gary, and Alex, they're big grade, and they're awesome. And it's great working with them. So shout out to them. And we also have an event coming up on Saturday that I think Alex wants to talk about.
Absolutely.
It's about that time for SecretCon. And shout out as well to our awesome team. I'm so happy to be a part of this. It's been awesome being on this ride, just seeing how we've been able to achieve this amazing feat, but also give back to our community and just be a part of that, and seeing so many people grow. We almost have one person a day telling us about a certification they've earned. So that's amazing. And just keeping that up within the community. But also, of course, our next con's coming up. So shameless plug about that.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, guys. And it's an honor having you guys on the show. And anything I can do to help out Bic or contribute, just let me know, and I'll be there for you guys. And with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and shut it down, and I'll see you guys next time. And you're always welcome. See you guys later.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond. CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and techstrong.tv.
All right, welcome back. Next up, we've got our Something Old segment. This is from the Cloud Native Days with Kubernetes event. This features Imad Benjamin, who is the Chief Technologist for App Platforms at VMware. The title of Imad's presentation is Multi-Cloud Distributed Application Runtimes, and it ventures into the role of modern distributed runtimes that can deliver a declarative approach to the resiliency problem in cloud environments. Good stuff there. Great presentation. Let's roll it now.
Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are listening to this session. My name is Imad Benjamin. I'm the Senior Director and Chief Technologist of Cloud Application Platforms and the Office of the CTO at VMware. And today's topic is about multi-cloud distributed application runtimes, what they are, what problems we are trying to tackle with this, and how VMware is investing in this new layer. Before we begin, I wanted to say a little bit about what my team is focused on. Essentially, we're focused on the intersection of application platforms and cloud architectures, basically doing co-innovation on what will become, hopefully, a product in the next 18 to 24 months by looking at several emerging industry technology streams or certain use cases that are being overlooked by the industry overall. So we try to innovate around the gaps in the industry. Now, to start with that, before I joined this role, I'd spent quite a bit of time with our customers. And one of the things that I would spend time with customers on is looking at application performance issues. And what I found is that 50% of the time, new applications would just fail basically to meet their SLA. What's interesting is that 70% of those enterprises or those customers have 2x to 3x more hardware being provisioned. So not only are they failing their SLAs, but they're throwing an immense amount of compute capacity at the problem, and they're still struggling. So this sort of what's the summary that is going on in the industry right now. I call it the Cio Conundrum. You know, CIOs get hired to drive feature velocity, get the lines of businesses be more excited about the new initiatives, business initiatives that they may have, and so on. CIO comes in, starts driving, a lot of features, doing more frequent releases and so on, and all of a sudden they realize that their systems are not adequate to handle the new resiliency posture, meaning they're causing instability. And so they're stuck in this vicious cycle. An SLA is missed after they roll out a new application. There's a misunderstanding as to where the problem is. The teams respond, immediate response, throw more hardware at the problem. And some of these gaps are born out of the organizational silos that they have between their application development teams and their infrastructure teams and so on, right? And around we go in a circle. And this is an industry problem that I've noticed being on the road with hundreds of our customers and many more that follow me on the ArcConf and the No Fluff Just Stuff circuit, conference circuit. Many share this fact that, with cloud, we try to, automate the infrastructure. With cloud native and microservices movement, we try to increase feature velocity, but no one is catching the day two runtime problem. And this is where we are focused on right now. So about almost 2 years ago, we put a patent together around this space. The patent talks about PRTC, which stands for Predictable Response Time Controller. And within that patent, actually, there's a call out for the notion of a cloud runtime. Just like in a traditional application, you may have, an application runtime encapsulating your code base that runs it. When you distribute that traditional application code base into a set of microservices that are geographically distributed, where is that common binding runtime? It doesn't exist today. And so we took the stance that runtime should exist. And if it exists, what are the sort of things it needs to do? It's a long topic. We're not going to be able to cover all of it today. And as such, I want to point you to a couple of publications that goes a little bit deeper into this space. The first one was published May 2019 as a paper on VMware's position on application platforms in general. And within that, we talk about cloud runtimes. And this June this year, we published another paper that talks about the notion of a cloud distributed application runtime, where it ties in information from the edge all the way to the last service across the distributed set of services that you may have in your cloud. Let's dig a little bit deeper into this problem that we're talking about. If you look at a typical enterprise or a typical line of business that's building custom applications for their business, you sort of have three camps. In the middle of the screen, we have the application platforms team. So they may have some stateless microservices. They may be doing cloud native in conjunction with some monolithic applications, but they're known as the applications team. And they're rolling out several different apps at a rapid or semi-rapid cadence. Could be weekly, could be bi-weekly, and so on. Now, these applications have a dependency on the right hand of the screen, the data platforms team. They have stateful applications. It might be a Kafka service, or it might be a MongoDB. It might be a few things. And between the application platforms team and the data platforms team, while they think differently about how to solve problems, there is a common ground and a common conversation during design and implementation between these two camps. And the industry mimics that too. There's a set of tools and a set of products around application platforms. And again, there's a set of tools and products and services around data platforms. Two fairly well-defined industries. Now, in order to complete a deployment of an application, let's say it's a mobile app, you have to have this third team over to the left side of the screen. I call it the user experience team. And the user experience team sort of sits and collects information about the edge and what they're seeing in terms of how they're interacting with the application. Somebody using the mobile app in New York, they click on the button to action a transaction. What are they actually physically seeing as a response time? Your application platform may be fast, your data platform may be fast, but what happens between that click to the time it gets to the application platform services? There is a lot going on. And there, most customers, what they do, they'll have these three separate teams, and the user experience team has their own set of tools, and it's almost another world. And they'll gather the telemetry and the data, and they'll send it over to the application platforms team. Not sure how long it takes and what cadence and so on, but it's not fast enough for the application platforms team to act in time to deliver the right sort of performance objective so that the user clicking on that button would be happy about their application. Essentially, what I'm saying is that you could spend $20 million revamping your application platforms and your data platforms, but if you haven't captured a solution that improves that last mile to the click for that user in New York, materially, your line of business is still not happy with you. So how do we bind these worlds together so that it's a one unified system? And in our perspective, in our humble opinion at VMware, we think a cloud runtime strategy or distributed application runtime strategy is what's needed. That ties in the edge information all the way to what I say, the last bit registered or the last service in the geography of the application. So let's dig a little bit deeper. So what kind of services could I have inside such runtime? Well, first, I need a way to be able to autoscale. And by the way, I'd like that to be policy-based, declarative, and hopefully without any code change. So I can just configure something, and it goes about performing autoscaling. I'd like it to understand level objectives and service level objectives. Now, there's also situations where I don't want to get into a lot of compute space that is not fully utilized. So I need some sort of a controller that looks at opportunities to consolidate. So we call this the deep loader. Then we have the notion of the compensator. What is a compensator? Well, there are bound to be a set of errors that occur in the system that your SREs, your site reliability engineers, would know how to remediate. Now, you can capture and register that error into the compensator and also capture and register the remediating action or script or function against that error. So the next time that error happens, the compensator immediately triggers that remediating action. Now imagine you're using this for a period of 6 months. All of a sudden you have 100 remediating actions that represent the dictionary set of what your SRE would do manually, but yet now it's being automated. We want to be able to do progressive upgrades, whether it's blue-green deployments, canary, A/B testing. As we roll out new services, we want to be able to simulate. We want to have a cost analyzer to understand what does it truly cost to run these services, whether in this cloud or the other cloud or multiple clouds. We want to have a defender controller, basically have ability to thwart attacks. For example, you may have a northbound WAF that just blocked a SQL injection attack, but yet we want to send a signal to downstream services via the defender pattern to say that there was a SQL injection attack and notify all application services, whether stateless or stateful, to go and double check if indeed SQL injection attack was caught in time. So you can have all sorts of handlers sitting there listening to see if there was truly any data compromise. And then finally, we want to be able to have a chaos moderation controller where we want to be able to simulate random failures in our releases and to see where the single points of failure are and basically design and implement various strategies to defend against that. Now, in order to tie in the edge all the way to the various set of geographically distributed services, we need end-to-end traceability. We call this the distributed runtime context. From the time that a user clicks on something to the last bit registered, that is a top-level object that's very well understood by the runtime. And now that we have that top-level object, we can start to attach expectations to it. And by expectations, I mean things like level objectives, whether it's a service level objective or transaction level objective. We want to be able to attach those things. So in essence, we have as abstractions, first we have the end-to-end transactional traceability. Then we have these abstractions that this runtime understands. The clusters that these services are running in, that services themselves, a global set of namespaces, which is an abstraction on top of a Kubernetes namespace or an abstraction on top of other namespaces. The notion of a transaction, now that we have end-to-end traceability, we can track that transaction. And of course, we can understand the application as a deployment unit. Those are key abstractions in what we call the cloud runtime. Of course, we talked about the edge to multi-cloud distributed traceability as another abstraction, the set of quality or QoS services that the runtime would offer, and the various level objectives. So since we have these abstractions, application, transaction, services, and clusters, we need a level objective at each one of these. So application level objective, which is ALO, transaction level objective, which is TLO, service level objective, SLO, and a cluster level objective. If everyone in a distributed system could be trusted to do what they promised to do, then we can create a cascade system of resiliency trust by just trusting all of the level objectives. And if we cannot trust them, we can write intelligent controllers that can marshal and redirect and remediate otherwise. And in terms of the products that we are using to bring all of this innovation together is basically VMware Velo Cloud, Tanzu Service Mesh is a big part of this, Tanzu Mission Control, TMC, and obviously Tanzu Observability or Wavefront. Now, from a different sort of slice of the abstraction hierarchy, you can think of clouds at the bottommost layer. As I mentioned earlier, you can spend quite a bit of money on improving your cloud infrastructure, and you should do that. But in terms of having direct user experience measurable quality of service, that is at the weaker end of the spectrum. And as we go up with a distributed runtime context and our true runtime, like I showed you in the last slide, we get an immediate measure of user experience and how we improved it. Because now we can say there were 1,000 users in New York, they clicked on the application, and we delivered those in 2 seconds that were specified at the application level objective. Here's the report. It's a little bit more difficult to do that when you don't have a runtime or a distributed application runtime that can give you that information. So as we build on these layers, you have clouds, whether it's private, public, or multi-cloud. You have other layer 7 infrastructure or other infrastructure abstractions, whether it's edge services, Kubernetes or non-Kubernetes. It could be SaaS services. And then on top of that, we layer, obviously, Tanzu Service Mesh that offers us a global namespace abstraction for our services so that we can treat a service sort of ubiquitously. Once it's defined in a global namespace, it's available everywhere where that application uses it. And then the QoS services that we talked about at the top there in green icons, and the end-to-end distributed runtime context or distributed traceability. In terms of Service Mesh today, you can actually get these policy-based Autoscaler and SLOs. And what we look to do in the future is add all of these other services. Now, I want to show you in the few minutes that I have left, a quick demo of how this concept can work. So we have an application called Acme, ACME. It's a fitness app, kind of a storefront purchasing app. Basically, just 1 second, let me set up the application. Okay, so the application has a set of services, set of microservices and stateful services. You sort of can buy different things. Here, the application is configured inside the Tanzu Service Mesh. There's a couple clusters, Prod 1 and Prod 2. But from an application global namespace perspective, we can treat any of our services as a common service within that global namespace. We don't really care that they run in multiple clusters, except we could track that they run in multiple clusters if we wanted to. But from an application logical construction perspective, we treat, for example, a cart service as a cart service in that global namespace. We don't really care whether it's running in Prod 1 or Prod 2. So one of the things you'll find is that in this application, there are, as I mentioned earlier, multiple services written in multiple languages. As the saying goes, that it's polyglot. So whether it's using Python, Go, Java, Node.js, and so on, it's a representation of the complexity of what cloud-native applications look like today. So what we do is set up a service level objective against the services. So storefront, P90 latency less than 100 milliseconds, and should be healthy 90% of the time. We select shopping service, and then we save it. Now, this policy has been saved. Now, we look at the performance charts. The overall SLO, it's green. The basically the error budget is stable within the thresholds, and then obviously latency is in check. And then we also will notice that the service instances are constant at 1. So there is no auto-scaling actually happening here because we haven't configured it, and the requests are coming in. Now we're going to stress the application a little bit, add more traffic to it, and we'll notice it'll start to slow down. Now, the remediating action for this is actually to set up an autoscaler. But as you can see in the performance charts, we're starting to redline here. CPU is rapidly rising, response time, latencies are rising, and the SLO, overall SLO health, is compromised. Now, we can see and track that cluster 1 latencies were actually worse. So if we need to double click, we can. Now let's set up an autoscaler. This is a proprietary autoscaler that we've written a special stable algorithm for it. And notice here, we had set this in simulation mode. So because we want to test out the policy before we actually activate it. So now the policy is in simulation mode. So we can see in simulation mode, it tells us that I have the instance count, and in green, I have the desired instance count. So this way, an SRE could trust what the autoscaler would actually do before they activate it. So let's go ahead and activate the autoscaler. We're going to activate the policy and save it and click next. And now we see that the SLO is starting to conform because we're starting to actually scale the instances. And so without any code change, we're able to add more resiliency to this distributed application by just a simple configuration using Tanzu Service Mesh. And so we are going to have many of such services to add. I went through multiple of them. We capture them as QoS services at layer 7. And we look forward to follow-up sessions in the future. Thank you.
Hey everybody, happy Thursday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with the headlines. First up on DevOps.com is an article about debunking 6 stubborn myths surrounding public cloud. A lot of enterprises migrate to the public cloud because they see someone else is doing it. Everyone else is doing it. And while you should stay up on the latest and greatest innovations, which often happen in the cloud, you need to be aware of the realities and understand different migration strategies. You need to know why you're moving to the cloud. What's your goal? And what outcomes are you seeking? You'll make sure you know that you're getting what you're getting your enterprise into before moving forward in your journey. This article offers up some of those 6 stubborn myths that persist about the public cloud and the realities that organizations are facing. Good stuff. And we discuss developer familiarity and how it is key to success. For some time, the goal of digital transformation was to replace legacy systems. It became a battle between all that was new and shiny and all that was old, outdated, and had to go. But this philosophy has since shifted as companies realize 2 crucial factors. First, legacy systems are often too important to be phased out entirely for traditional organizations. Given SQL's flexibility and familiarity among developers, for example. As a result, many of these legacy applications and systems are instead being converted into virtual versions of their former selves. Second, tossing out legacy systems disrupts existing skills and not in a good way. There is growing acknowledgement that orphaning legacy skills is a mistake. Doing so can cannibalize skill sets and business knowledge that should be retained. There's also the realization that we don't need to juxtapose legacy and newer technologies. Modern systems can incorporate and even absorb legacy environments, coding languages, and processes. This article looks at how organizations can effectively utilize their legacy systems in today's digital environments for success. All right, over on Container Journal, we look at stateful container high availability. As digital adoption has ramped up in response to pandemic-related changes in the business environment, enterprises have accelerated the digitization of their customer and supply chain interactions, as well as their internal operations, by as much as 4 years. Companies had already started increasing digital transformation projects, replacing manual IT tasks with software to automate the test, configuration, and runtime processes, and for good reason. It's been recognized for decades that digital transformation can not only dramatically improve IT and business capabilities, but can also save money. One result of all these digital transformation initiatives has been an explosion of software container use. Now, while containers were originally designed to be entirely stateless and ephemeral, digital transformation initiatives are also driving the adoption of stateful containers. Previously, containers could spin up, do their job, and disappear, leaving no record of what happened while they were running. But how can organizations move these projects from the development and test phase to production? The answer is that companies will need to deploy a good, better, and best high availability methodology for their stateful containers. This article looks at the 3 degrees of high availability and which works best for optimizing Kubernetes clusters. And we look at Devsecops essentials for containers. Devsecops has emerged as the preferred and necessary approach to secure modern applications by ensuring security practices are seamlessly integrated into the software development and delivery process in an automated fashion. While companies have historically invested in security, many have not progressed far in their efforts to program security into their software development and operations lifecycle. While container-based applications bring many efficiencies like speed, flexibility, and agility, these are often not realized if manual security configurations, reviews, and audits stand between development and production. As such, taking full advantage of modern approaches to application development also requires a modern security approach. This article offers up what organizations need to consider with containers with respect to DevSecOps and essential best practices to implement as code to adopt a practical DevSecOps approach for building modern secure apps. On Security Boulevard, we look at red teams and the value of open source proof of concept exploits. Red teams are a necessary part of a good cybersecurity program. The red team is offensive security. In red teaming, you need to understand your adversary, whether in the cloud or on premises, and then mimic the adversary. To know if red team processes can be successful, you need a proof of concept. That is the ability to show that hackers can take advantage of a security flaw. This article does a deep dive into red teaming with respect for proofs of concept. The point of red teams and red teaming is to find the vulnerabilities and weaknesses in a system before the bad guys do. And by relying on an open source proof of concept tools, security researchers can build a collaborative community to share information about flaws and stay ahead of the threat actors and nation states. And we look at the results of a report published by Ivanti that suggests the ransomware scourge may be on the cusp of entering a more lethal phase, as the number of vulnerabilities associated with ransomware capable of remote code execution continued to increase in the third quarter. The Q3 2021 Ransomware Index Spotlight report found a 4.5% increase in the number of common vulnerabilities and exposures associated with ransomware, and a similar 4.5% increase in actively exploited and trending vulnerabilities. There was also a 3.4% increase in ransomware families discovered, and a 1.2% increase in older vulnerabilities now being used in ransomware attacks. In total, 92.4% of all vulnerabilities can now be tied to ransomware one way or another, the report noted. As ransomware attacks become more sophisticated, it's apparent the current crisis is about to deepen. More attacks will involve remote code execution using malware designed for specific targets as cybercriminal gangs begin to rely less on broad-based attacks. In effect, cybercriminals that launch ransomware attacks are becoming more efficient. This article digs into the results of the report and offers some advice for organizations to address these issues. Good stuff. All right, that's it for the headlines today. Please check back with me on Monday. I'll have some more for you. Fresh new batch. Until then, I hope everybody has a great day, great weekend. Please, whatever you do, stay safe.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Techstrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I am here now with Dustin Radke, who is the CTO of a company called OnSolve. Dustin, thank you so much for taking the time and getting on the Zoom with me today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Charlene.
Right. Tell me a little bit about OnSolve.
So OnSolve is a provider of critical event management solutions that allow companies to take control of the risks and threats to any one of their people, places, or assets that are out in the field, whether it be their assets or supplier assets, as well as to be able to then manage any type of risks all the way through their life cycle. So if you have some type of risk that's going to impact your business, you can communicate to the right people, you can manage the incident life cycle, and make sure that you have the best possible outcome given the different types of threats that can happen at any time.
Well, that's very cool. I imagine you guys rely on AI, at least a healthy dose of it, to be able to accomplish this.
Very heavily. Yeah. Yes,
Great.
Very heavily.
Excellent. So your technology seems very kind of almost like fit for purpose, if you will, for this conversation that I want to have with you about AI and the larger issue around supply chain, the issues that we've been having economically, basically since the pandemic. There have been issues, disruptions to the supply chain, and your organization thinks that some of those issues could have been mitigated with the right type of forecasting using AI. So tell me about that. I really want to hear kind of dive into that idea and how things could have been different.
Yeah. So a lot of companies talk about AI and supply chain, about how you're going to handle the impact of something after it happens. But what we focus on here at OnSolve and what we really look at applying AI to understand how can you avoid it from happening in the first place, whether you want to understand how the actual risk could impact your business. So if you think about maybe the power outages that have been happening in China, those power outages obviously have a dramatic impact on the supply chain because of the amount of inventory that is sourced from China or for different regions. If you use AI, you can actually predict in a fairly confident fashion when a power outage might happen, because those power outages are usually caused by some type of extreme weather event and stuff like that. If you use AI allows you to look at those types of events, plot them against any of your supplier facilities to give you a prediction of where you may be at risk so that you can start to take action before the event actually happens. Because it's all about first mover advantage. And that's where our AI comes in, is how do we allow companies to give that first mover advantage by predicting the impact to your business, knowing the threats as they're happening from all the different data sources.
So when we're talking about the pandemic, though, I mean, I don't think anybody expected this to happen. We were just, it almost hit us like a ton of bricks when it did finally kind of settle on us. Is that something that AI could have predicted? It's something that's so unforeseen as that.
Yeah, AI may not have predicted the COVID as itself, but they can help you predict the impact to your business as it rolls around the world. So it was very evident where we were seeing higher concentrations of COVID across different regions and across different cities. If you had AI that's monitoring all the data sources that are reporting that, because it's not just one data source, that's analyzing it and then applying that information to where you actually have facilities or operations that impact your overall supply chain, that's where AI really helps you get that first mover advantage. So I always caution people from thinking, AI is some space age thing that's going to tell us what's going to happen in the future, but it can help you predict the impact of things that are happening now that do lead to future impacts.
So had companies have this technology and be able to use it effectively to understand what was going to be happening with the supply chain, how much do you think the supply chain issues that we're experiencing today, how much do you think that could have been mitigated? Do you think we could have gotten to the point where the supplies are thin, but still bearable? We could still kind of get through and get what we need. We just won't have a glut of supplies or technologies.
Yeah, I think it would have helped in certain cases. It all depends on what was the cause of it. If it was caused by things where there just wasn't resources able to do the job at a mass scale, like may have happened with the lumber industry, where they just didn't have the people to be able to execute the job, those kind of things are harder to mitigate the impact for. But if there's areas where you could source from a different region and make your sourcing decisions differently, it could have helped each company manage that at a much better scale. We have some customers today that use our software to actually monitor their fleet of vehicles that are roaming around the globe, and I want to understand what are the risks that could impact them. Maybe there's a potential, some protests happening in an area. That alone wouldn't impact you. But if you're monitoring it closely and start to understand how that protest could turn violent, that violence could definitely interrupt your traffic cycle. So we can give you that predictive information so you can avoid it and take that extra precaution up front rather than dealing with the impact after the fact.
Okay. All right. So, I imagine the majority of your clients aren't using this technology on such a grand scale as to kind of predict how the pandemic is going to impact their operations. But what are some of the use cases that they are? I mean, you just mentioned that one, the protest example, which is a great one. But are there certain use cases that some of your clients are using the technology for that might be something that is, maybe a little bit more relevant or just something that maybe your average organization might encounter on a fairly regular basis?
Yeah. So, civil unrest, while it may seem like it's not that widespread, it's actually much more widespread than people realize. So that is a definite use case people use it for. Active shooter situations, active assailants, that type of thing is where we can give that input so you can take action before there's any harm done. There's other pieces that are really critical all around weather. If you think about the impact that weather can have and having that early detection and understanding the weather patterns as it relates to, wind direction. If you're in the West Coast, we have a lot of customers that use us heavily for active fire situations because that can dramatically impact, supply chain routes, as well as different types of sources, et cetera. So it's a very large scale of risks. And that's where companies, they may focus on one. Technology like OnSolve provides or others allows you to really take a hold of all of those different risks. Given the explosion in data and sources, the only way to really handle that is through AI.
That's really fascinating stuff. And I know we've been talking about AI in so many different use cases. This is one that I think that definitely is very, very much needed in the space, but it's so very helpful because it really can solve a lot of the problems that organizations are having or will have, and they just not even know that they're going to have it. So, do you see that this technology is going to be more adopted, more widespread as we go along, and what's kind of been holding back the adoption until now?
I think there's definite uptick in demand, extreme uptick in demand, I have to say.
Yeah.
And what's really driving it is there is a lot of, the world's not becoming any more complacent. This type of risk and the type of things that you need to be in front of is becoming a board level conversation. And as soon as corporate boards start talking about what is our risk profile and how do we get better visibility to those risks actually becoming real, that's what's really driving a lot more of this discussion. People are trying to say we can't be reactive all the time. We've got to get into more of a proactive stance, and that's what's driving it, as well as technology is now at the point that we're able to achieve what customers have been asking for.
Okay. All right. So do you expect this to be more of a, I guess as we go on, God, I hate to use the word, but like a more of a pedestrian or ubiquitous technology, to the point where any size company can take advantage of this technology?
Definitely. The thing that was always the barrier before was cost, because you would usually have to have an army of people to be able to monitor all the different types of data sources and to be able to understand and do some of the threat impact to your business, where technology with AI has been able to take away the need for all of those analysts on staff, which brings down the barrier of entry so that companies can provide software to give them that insight.
That's cool. So it's like AI as a service, almost something like that.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, Dustin, thanks so much for walking me through this. It's really, really fascinating stuff. I'm always amazed at what AI can actually do for organizations. And I think I'm well past the AI is going to take us over and AI is going to be our overlords and Skynet and all that good stuff. So AI, I've come to the conclusion that AI can actually be our friend. So thank you, Dustin. Definitely. I appreciate your time and your expertise. It sounds like great technology that your company has. So appreciate your walking me through it.
Great. Thanks, Charlene.
You bet. All right, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more Techstrong TV coming up, so stay tuned.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Techstrong TV. I'm Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with Rich Naster, who is the VP and Chief Scientist at Digital.ai. Rich, thanks so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Charlene. It's great to be here with you.
Great. So I want to talk a little bit about the Scaled Agile framework. And it's something that we have covered on DevOps.com in the past, but I thought it might be interesting just to have kind of an introductory conversation about it for those who might not be familiar with it. So, you in your capacity at Digital AI, or even maybe outside of Digital AI, how involved are you in the Scaled Agile framework? But before you actually answer that question, why don't you give us a little explanation of what the Scaled Agile framework, or SAFE, is?
Sure. So SAFE is it's a framework. It's a knowledge base, and it contains the principles and practices for doing lean, agile, and DevOps at scale. And in essence, what it does, it enables large enterprises to become agile, become lean, and to implement DevOps practices and value stream management as well. So it's a really great framework for being able for large enterprises to kind of get back to their roots when an organization first starts out. They're not a big lumbering enterprise. And as they get larger and larger, instead of things being like a network of people that can just talk to each other, it becomes, you have silos and people work in hierarchies. And then that really impedes the flow of value. So we help get organizations back to that same thinking and mindset and way of organizing so that they can do their jobs better and faster and really have more fun too.
I imagine you guys talk with all manner of organizations that are in all different phases of their company growth and how they get to Agile and DevOps. And so you guys probably have seen pretty much seen it all when it comes to organizations trying to move to this more Agile mindset and business process. So from your experience, what are you seeing as far as uptake for these the scaled Agile framework as it pertains to just kind of understanding the value that SAFE can bring to an organization?
Yeah, I think especially this past year, the year during the pandemic, we've seen a much higher take-up of scaled Agile. I think we all experienced that moment where, our business needs to pivot and change. We're no longer just selling, let's say, our jeans in a store. We now need to buy them online, but we have a B2B business. How do we have the business agility to go from mainly a B2B business to a B2C business? So there's lots of stories out there that's happened like that. And SAFE has helped organizations adapt much quicker. So this year, we saw a large increase in the SAFE adoption. About 37% of the organizations that we surveyed in the State of the Agile report showed that they're using scaled Agile.
Okay. All right. So, and when we're talking about this framework, is it basically kind of a roadmap, if you will, or from a technology perspective, or is it does it involve the people and the processes as well, or because we talk about DevOps being the people, processes, and technology, that three-legged stool. So is that basically what SAFE is as well as DevOps or Agile? Does it really address that whole sphere, if you will, of the people, process, and technology?
Yes, absolutely. It covers all three. And so, from a people perspective, one of the things that we teach companies to do is how to organize their teams in value streams, which are basically in organizations' products and services, and then to further design those value streams into what we call an Agile release train, which is a team of Agile teams. And we make those teams, or we advise them how to make those teams cross-functional and to optimize how value flows. So we have all the roles that we need on each Agile team and on the train so that they can deliver value end-to-end with as little interruptions as possible. So that's where a good part of the people comes in. And of course, we have principles and practices in the framework that helps you think about the lean mindset, the Agile mindset, even things like having a growth versus fixed mindset, a generative culture. So there's a lot of things in there that seeds the ideas of what the corporation should be going down the road. And of course, you can adopt the framework incrementally. Mm-hmm. And most organizations start with what we call essential SAFE. And the technology piece is also handled too. We provide guidance on how to do DevOps, how to do continuous delivery, and what are some of the best coding practices for organizations to adopt. Things like built-in quality practices and solid principles for coding. Mm-hmm. So it contains that as well. And really it really covers all those things really well. And it allows you to understand what are the issues that you will be facing. And there is a roadmap in SAFe, which helps you adopt SAFe incrementally. There's no big bang approach that we recommend that we're going to make the entire organization agile. That's something that the organization has to do. And we provide some guidance on that you should have both people internally and externally help with the transformation. You can't do it alone. And you can't write a check and give it to a company and say, make us safe, make us agile.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So then how does an organization, when is kind of that big aha moment when an organization says, we really need to kind of shift to something along the lines of SAFe or, Agile or DevOps or something like that? What would be, I guess, the profile of an organization that is SAFe ready, if you will?
Yeah, so I think a lot of organizations find that when they have multiple teams that need to contribute to a solution, and that there's lots of handoffs and delays between teams, that they realize we can't continue this way. We can't meet our time to market requirements. We're not providing the quality that we need. People are not enjoying working in the company because everything is such big bureaucracy that they can't get anything done. So that's when I think they really realize that just doing Team Agile is not enough, and trying to roll your own process for doing Agile at scale is just not enough. It takes too long, and you don't really have a common language to use and a common way of working, so that, if you were on Team A versus Team B in a different value stream, the ways of working would be very similar. And even more importantly, when you get really large, if you're a Boeing or a Lockheed Martin, mm-hmm. and you have teams of teams of teams, and you have hundreds, if not thousands of developers, how do you organize that work? And you need to be on the same cadence, and you need to frequently synchronize. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot where DevOps comes into play too. It helps with the synchronization, right, besides the planning synchronization that happens as well.
Okay. So, yeah, I've heard about organizations, when they decide to adopt kind of the DevOps principles and mindset and culture, that they, the advice is always start small and then kind of grow as you get more comfortable with it. But it seems to me that might actually kind of lead to kind of siloing of teams, if you will. So if it's not done correctly, does SAFe kind of create or encourage more collaboration among teams so that we don't end up with siloed DevOps teams, multiple DevOps teams in an organization, and really, we're still in a situation where they're not really working together to speed application development and deployment, and everybody's just still kind of doing their own thing. They're just all doing it using the DevOps principles.
Yeah, so that's something that's really built into the DNA of SAFe, mm-hmm. is that we organize our teams around the company's products and services that it delivers, and then we design Agile release trains, which are teams of teams, and we figure out who should be on the Agile release train. When it gets too big, then we've got to separate that. How do we reduce the dependencies between teams? And we also advise them to see if we can do things like looking at our architecture. Because one of the things that creates silos is our architecture. And many organizations, at least most organizations that I've been to, especially if you're not a digital native, the architecture has grown up over time through mergers and acquisitions. And what happens is you have to work on a big monolithic solution. And a lot of pieces have to go into production at the same time. And that causes a lot of dependencies between teams. So one of the big things we want to look at is how can we reduce the dependencies between teams? How can teams work as independently as possible, but are still aligned to a common mission, vision, and way of working? And that's really powerful stuff.
Yeah. All right. Great. Well, it's really, it's a fascinating way of organizations doing business, basically. And to your point earlier, we really saw a lot of movement over the last 18, 19 months, especially, during the pandemic, when organizations recognized that they either had to digitally transform or they weren't going to be around this time the next year. So I imagine that your organization has worked a lot with organizations that started or maybe accelerated their digital transformation efforts and probably hit a brick wall because they just weren't working well among themselves within the organization.
Yes, I mean, it really was an adapt or die situation. And, that's not overstating it. So like this year, again, according to our State of the Agile survey, 86% of teams report that they're now following Agile practices or adopting Agile in some way. And I'm sure it's not being done perfectly. It's very difficult to do Agile in large organizations. And I think that's why there was also a big increase in the number of organizations that have been adopting scaled Agile, because it truly works. And it allows Agile to flourish even in a large organization.
Well, it sounds like great technology, great framework, and I'm sure that organizations can really benefit from it if they've been even considering moving to an agile environment or DevOps environment. So definitely something that they should check out. Rich, thanks so much for having the conversation with me today. I really do appreciate it.
Same here, Charlene. It's been a pleasure speaking to you about this.
Great. All right, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more Techstrong TV coming up, so stay tuned. Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, and I'm here now with the webinars preview for you. I always tell you we have so many great webinars coming up on DevOps.com, Container Journal, and Security Boulevard. Here are 3 that I think you might enjoy, so you can mark your calendar and join us. The first one is called Accelerating Time to Market with Value Stream Management and SAFE. This one is happening Friday, November 12th at 1 p.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. This one is sponsored by Digital.ai. In this webinar, our speakers will discuss the challenges, pitfalls, and benefits of using SAFE and value stream management for software delivery. So some of the topics to be covered include what value stream management is and why it matters, how to implement value stream management in SAFE, ways to overcome obstacles for fast value delivery, and how to leverage Digital.ai DevOps value stream delivery for SAFE. Good stuff there. The second one is called Defending Software Supply Chain Attacks with Kubernetes and Devsecops. That one is happening Monday, November 15th at 11 a.m. Eastern on DevOps.com. It is sponsored by Contrast Security. This webinar will look at the considerations, limitations, and DevSecOps best practices when building out an automation strategy for securing Kubernetes workloads. So among the topics of discussion will be the shared responsibility approach to cybersecurity in the software supply chain, creating and scaling automation frameworks, and enhancing the security of Kubernetes workloads with instrumentation. Another good one there, very, very relevant as well. All right, the last webinar is called Progressive Release Management is Key to DevOps. This one is happening Tuesday, November 16th at 11 a.m. Eastern. This one is sponsored by Plutora. Release management originated to reduce risk. There were multiple teams who needed to work together seamlessly, and someone needed to manage the dependencies between them. Now, as pipelines are automated more and they automate more and more risk out of the equation, CABs and other existing processes are keeping organizations from increasing their DevOps capabilities. So to overcome this, stay relevant, and unstick your DevOps evolution, release management needs to change. So this webinar takes a look at the new progressive release management capabilities of the Platura value stream management platform and how organizations can leverage it to provide more value to their organization throughout its DevOps evolution. So among the key takeaways, how to unstick your DevOps with value stream flow and DevOps metrics, how to become an insight-driven progressive release manager, and finally, how to achieve business objectives by following IT initiative trends. Good stuff all the way around. All right, that's it for the webinar's preview. Please check back with me on Monday when I'll have a fresh new batch for you. Until then, I hope everybody has a great day. And please, whatever you do, stay safe.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
All right, welcome back. Next up, Mitch Ashley talks with Jordan Gruber, who is the Senior Technical Product Manager for AWS AI DevOps. And they talk about the bug bust, AWS bug bust that is happening at the AWS reInvent event this next week. It is the first annual, and they are striving to break the Guinness World Record, or set the Guinness World Record for bug busting. So Jordan encourages as many people as they want to actually take part in this, and they can participate by registering and busting even a single software bug during reInvent. This is it's a nifty endeavor. Let's go ahead and roll it now.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Well, I have the great pleasure of being joined today by Jordan Gruber. Jordan is with AWS, and she is Senior Technical Product Manager. We're going to be talking about the AWS Bug Buster program. Welcome, Jordan. Good to be talking with you.
Hi, it's great to meet you, Mitch.
Good to have you here. So this is a program been going on for a while, but before we get into it, if you would just give us an introduction tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at AWS.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I am the Senior Technical Product Manager for Bug Bust. I work as a product manager defining our strategy within the AI and machine learning organization, working on our DevOps tools.
Excellent. So we're talking about AWS. I don't know why I'm stumbling over that. AWS Bug Buster. Tell us a little bit about the program. I know it launched a little while back, but what are you trying to accomplish? What's the goal of the program?
Sure. We launched AWS Bug Bust in June of 2021, so just a few months ago. Bug Bust really helps us and helps our customers gamify fixing bugs and the code review process. So customers are able to use Amazon Code Guru, which is a machine learning service that we offer, to scan their code to find bugs and recommendations for those bugs within their code using machine learning. And Bug Bust is a platform that allows a user to import those bugs that were found by Code Guru into the Bug Bust platform to hold a bug bash for their organization. So as developers fix the bugs in the bug bash, they'll get points. The more severe the bug, the more points they receive. AWS is giving away prizes to the developers as they reach milestones. At 100 points, you get a t-shirt. 2,000 points, you receive a varsity jacket, and at 10,000, you receive a trophy. So our ultimate goal is to reduce technical debt by $100 million and collectively fix 1 million bugs across all of the organizations who are participating in this bug bust.
Wow. Sounds like a lot of fun. Almost sounds like a frequent flyer program for bug busting, but very cool. That's awesome. Well, you mentioned Code Guru. Now, that's not a new tool, right? That's been around for a while. And this is something that you can get greater exposure with Code Guru for folks to be able to analyze their code looking for bugs.
Yeah. So Code Guru, Reviewer, and Profiler are both a part of Bug Bust. Reviewer is a static code analysis tool that helps you find bugs within your Java and Python code. And Code Guru Profiler finds profiles to help optimize your CPU usage within your code.
Excellent. Now, are there specific languages that it can handle, or is it a wide range of programming languages?
We support Java and Python today.
Okay, that's a large population there, obviously. Well, cool. Now, tell us, you've been doing this for a little while. This didn't just launch. So you've been working with organizations on setting up programs for bug busting, correct?
Yes, we have. So we've helped a number of different organizations ranging from academic institutions for educational purposes to leading multinational banks set up bug bust events for their developers to, create some camaraderie and a little bit of competition, especially in these times where we're not necessarily going into the office. We have teams that set up Slacks and do a little bit of trash talking to one another while they're fixing bugs and climbing up the leaderboard.
Nothing like either having the leaderboard or the wall of sheep they always have at the security conferences, right, for folks that get hacked. But a little competition between folks makes what we need to do anyway a lot more fun, or even more fun.
Yeah, it definitely makes the code review process a little more fun, and it helps teams come together towards a common goal that you can really see every time you fix a bug. And some teams will ring a bell or beep a buzzer so that they can all cheer on one another while they're fixing these bugs.
Cool. And you're in the AI part of the organization, the product organization. Tell us a little bit about what role does AI play in the bug busting, the Code Guru and Profiler tools, Reviewer?
Sure. So the Code Guru for both Reviewer and Profiler utilize machine learning in order to find the bugs within your code. We're always introducing new different types of detectors. You can find issues from Java, Python, or AWS best practices, concurrency issues, security issues. Those are some of the ones that customers, I think, really are going to be focused on. And those issues, the security ones that are higher severity, we give you more points for those in Bug Bust to help the user accomplish, if they spend more time and are doing things that are higher priority, they're rewarded for that. I also would like to talk a little bit about what we're doing with Bug Bust at reInvent, if that's okay.
Absolutely. It's just coming up here real quickly, real short. What date does it start? I think the 28th of November.
Yes. So Midnight Madness kicks off on the 28th of November and reInvent runs through the 3rd of December. So I just mentioned that with Bug Bust, since our launch in June, we've had organizations hold private events for their own internal developers. With reInvent, we are launching the first annual AWS Bug Bust reInvent Challenge. And this challenge is going to be a little bit different from the private events. This is public. It's open to any developer worldwide. You can be at reInvent in person and come see us at the Bug Bust Hub and learn more about it, or you don't have to attend reInvent. Anyone can register virtually and participate as well. In this instance, users will be fixing bugs, or bug busters will be fixing bugs in open source code repositories across a lot of different interesting domains like big data, machine learning, gaming, just to name a few. And each player will receive milestone prizes. The more bugs they fix, the more prizes they receive. We're giving away things like t-shirts, fly swatters, even Echo Dots. At the end of the event, there will be an ultimate bug buster who will win a cash prize. And as a part of this event, we're also making an attempt at a Guinness World Record. So we are looking to achieve the world record for the world's largest bug fixing event. So each person who creates an account, logs in, and fixes at least one bug during the time period of November 11th to December 2nd will receive a certificate of achievement if we do hit that record. And we'll invite the people who are there in person at reInvent can come join a celebration with us for this achievement.
Now, for the reInvent portion of this, are you supplying code that people can submit, or do people need to write their own code, then submit and fix bugs in?
So we've identified a number of different open source repositories where we will direct users to those repositories, and they'll fix bugs there. And then at the end of the event, we'll contribute the code back to those open source communities.
Interesting. Well, so kind of it's helpful in multiple ways, right?
Yeah.
Also including improving some open source. But I'm interested then, are there certain services, AWS services that the bug busting program or the Code Guru tool focuses on? I mean, like just picking it at random, DynamoDB or whatever kind of service in AWS. So more generally about just code and logic in Python and Java.
It's more generally just about code and logic in Python and Java. We're not focused on a specific database or other service within AWS. Most of our customers have a variety of repos within GitHub or possibly AWS code commit where they're scanning this. It can be front-end code, back-end code. Any Java or Python code that you have can be scanned with Code Guru, and you can run a bug bust on that code.
Okay, so this doesn't have to be code that's running or going to run in an AWS environment. It can be any Java or Python code then.
Correct.
Okay, interesting. So good. Well, that makes it accessible to a wide range of people. I mean, obviously the Code Guru profiler reviewer tools are SaaS, are hosted in AWS, correct? Right. So
yes, they are.
You're using AWS to use those kind of tools. Well, cool. What other kind of activities are built around this? So is there sort of a plan, if we reach the record, we'll give everybody a certificate, but there are other activities that you're thinking kind of post this, or is it something that will end, after we've reached the goal?
So the Guinness World Record itself will take place November 29th through December 2nd. So it's a 4-day attempt. And during that time, we'll be giving away milestone prizes. If you're at reInvent, we have swag in our Bug Bust Hub and at the kiosk. So come out, see us there. At the conclusion of that event, we will have a celebration, and what's next is yet to be announced. So I can't share that information with you today, but after reInvent, individual organizations are absolutely encouraged to continue holding their own private bug bust events for their internal teams, and stay tuned to see if we have more announcements for other public events or competitions.
Great. So potentially more to come. Sounds good. Interesting. What else should we know? I mean, we probably want to let folks know about, obviously, if you're at reInvent, you could stop by the booth, as you mentioned. Is there a particular site that folks can go to sign up to participate in the program?
Yes. So we have pre-registration open now, and you can pre-register by going to bugbust.aws. So that's bugbust.aws. And there you will create your bug bust profile, which is different from your AWS account. If you're a current AWS user, you don't have to have an AWS account to participate in this. But if you do, just keep in mind they're different accounts. And you'll create your account, you'll be able to sign in and pre-register. So all of the information that you need will be on that web page. And there's a countdown on the web page to the event. You'll receive a notification when the event starts, and you can go in and begin fixing bugs in your area of interest.
Excellent. Well, I'll make sure to include that link in the description of our video that we're doing today. Well, I wish you the best. It's a great cause, great event, interesting, compelling, fun, lots of good things about it. Plus we get, better quality code at the end of it. So that's cool. It's been great talking with you, Jordan.
Great talking with you as well, Mitch. I've really enjoyed this. If anyone has any questions, we do have an email address that they can reach out to. It's awsbugbust.com. awsbugbust@amazon.com. And they can reach out, ask any questions about this event or hosting their own private bug bust events. We're happy to help in any way we can. We have a team of bug bust ambassadors that can help you set up your own private events, or if you have questions, we'll address them either through a phone call, email, whatever you would like to do.
I guess instead of Ghostbusters, who you're going to call is Bug Busters.
Yeah, exactly.
All righty. Great speaking with you again. Good luck. We'll see you at reInvent.
CISO Talk, to hear how real-world CISOs are dealing with today's real-world issues. From enabling secure remote workers to accelerating secure cloud adoption, defending against a pandemic of security attacks and beyond, CISO Talk covers the cyber topics you want to learn about. With your hosts, Unisys CISO Matt Newfield and MediaOps CEO Alan Schimmel, featuring a revolving panel of CISO cyber experts. This is where CISOs talk. Join us on digitalanarchist.com and Techstrong.tv.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Rounding out today's Techstrong TV interviews is a conversation, The View with Vizard. Mike Vizard speaks with the Data on Kubernetes community, members including Umar Mufti, who is the Director of Product Management at Pure Storage, Gabrielle Bartolini, who's the VP of Cloud Native at EDB, and Melissa Logan, who's the Director of the Data on Kubernetes community. This is a great new organization and definitely one worth checking out if your organization is doing anything with cloud native containers, Kubernetes, all that good stuff. So let's go ahead and roll the conversation now.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey guys, thanks for the throw. We're here with some members of the Data on Kubernetes community. We're here, Melissa Logan, who's the director, and then we have Gabrielle Bartolini, who is a vice president of cloud for EDB. And finally, we have Umar Mufti, who's director of product management for Portworx by Pure Storage. Folks, welcome to the show. Melissa, can you just walk us through what is this whole community about? Where did it get started and what's the mission?
Sure, no problem. So Kubernetes, as we all know, has been around for a while, and we know it for its ability to run stateless workloads. And until the persistent volume, CSI, things like this came around, you really didn't even think about it for running stateful workloads. But when that happened and the operator pattern emerged, we started to see stateful workloads being brought over to Kubernetes. But I think as these two will tell you, it hasn't been very easy, and it's still not, there's no kind of standard best practice way to do this. So the Data on Kubernetes community was formed to focus on this. So how can we bring people together to share best practices for running data on Kubernetes? And it was formed about a year ago. And we recently just announced a new governance structure and 20 sponsors to create working groups and bring people together to try to solve this challenge.
Umar, what's driving this conversation? I know you guys have been at this for a little while, but I talk to a lot of people and some of them swear that everything will be stateless and they will never put stateful applications on Kubernetes because they already have storage systems in place. And by God, stateful applications are hard. So they're just like, let's go with what we got. But is there a reason, or what's the rationale for putting stateful applications on Kubernetes?
Yeah, if you look at the actual numbers, the number of people actually attempting to run stateful workloads on Kubernetes is quite high. Even if you look at the Datadog survey done last year on their own report of what containers are running in most of their environments, you see that like the biggest number of applications are things like Redis and Elasticsearch and other stateful applications, databases specifically. So it's a very common need, and it just makes sense. After you've moved your microservices and other stateless applications into Kubernetes, why run your databases or other stateful applications elsewhere, right? So all these companies are investing tons of money. Obviously, we know Kubernetes is eating the world, right? The fastest growing open source project in the history of computer science. So why build out two different data centers, or why do things different ways? So we're seeing a lot of people trying to run stateful applications on Kubernetes as well.
Gabrielle, are you seeing the same thing? I mean, a lot of this comes down to just putting a database on Kubernetes in the first place. What's the hard part about A, putting the database on Kubernetes, and B, are we starting to see, I don't know, DBAs and storage admins starting to show up in the land of Kubernetes, or is everything being managed by one team of converged roles and super administrators?
Yeah, that's actually a challenge for our time. I think we're seeing there's a lot of changes happening because of the DevOps movement. So what Umair was saying before, there's this need to deliver features as much as we can, as fast as we can to our end users. And we have an opportunity, thanks to Kubernetes, to bring together developers and sysadmins and DBAs as well. So this is also, I think, something that will be unveiled in the next years, in the years to come, how the DBA job will be reshaped, for example. These are unknown questions, emerging problems that we will need to discover. And that's, I think, also some of the goals of this community is to actually help, get all these profiles together in this, continuously changing environment. So Kubernetes is definitely an opportunity for all workloads, databases included. For example, in my experience, I've been running PostgreSQL for more than 20 years. And I think that there's a lot of ground to do to make it much better in the Kubernetes space. But what we see already is really amazing. Okay, so I think it's more a cultural mind shift that all these all the DBAs and developers need to go through to get together in this cloud native environment, in my opinion.
Yeah. Melissa, you guys just did a survey. What did you find in that survey? And more importantly, what surprised you in that survey?
Well, I think to Umair's point, the idea of, I'm already doing stateless workloads on Kubernetes, why I want to also bring my stateful over, that came through pretty loud and clear in our survey. What we saw is that standardization on Kubernetes was a key driver for a lot of people wanting to kind of bring these things together. So that came through pretty loud and clear. And what was really surprising was we didn't know, this was kind of the first of its kind survey of the landscape, and we didn't know what we didn't know. We saw a stat in last year's CNCF survey that said it was 55%, I think, of stateful workloads people were running in Kubernetes. What we found is that 90% of people believe Kubernetes is ready for stateful, and 70% are already doing so. So there's a large majority of people who are running stateful in Kubernetes, in spite of some of the challenges that we see. Some of the challenges that were brought up were the number one reason was lack of interoperability with their stack, as well as integration with their stack. So those two things are coming up as key issues that we'll need kind of a big tent to figure out how to solve some of these things, both inside and outside of Kubernetes. Another one was that the operator pattern that emerged has been really useful, and you see it being used across all different kinds of stateful workloads, but operators have their own set of challenges as well. There's kind of a lack of interoperability among operators was listed as a key issue, and as was the quality of operators. So there's no standards for operators, so you just see a lot of variance in quality. But I think, finally what we saw just looking ahead to the future is people do see a great future for data on Kubernetes. And what they're looking for is kind of more standards inside and outside Kubernetes, standards for data management. They would like data to become more declarative like Kubernetes. And we hear these sentiments echoed by other people that we talk to in our community as well.
Umair, I think that this may be the third year I've heard about this is the year Kubernetes matures. So as we go into this one more time, Is this the year finally where we think Kubernetes matures and it is this standard tool within the enterprise? And if so, are DevOps teams driving that still, or do we think it's going to be a bigger part of the IT community and there'll be more general purpose administrators and mere mortals trying to run Kubernetes?
Yeah, I don't look at it as sort of a black and white thing. The way I think about things are like different levels of Zen, right? So we had sort of the virtualization, revolution of the world, and then containerization came. Kubernetes made that easy for stateless applications. It was still at that point difficult to do stateful workloads on Kubernetes, as we pointed out. The CSI drivers, the software-defined storage solutions like Portworx and others came along to kind of solve the state problem. Operator pattern emerged, and we're still not quite there with other data services right now. And the reason really for that, I feel like we've done a pretty good job of talking about stateful applications, but there's still a gap. And that gap really is around things that are distributed applications, right? So things like a Postgres, where you've got a primary and you've got read replicas, or you've got streaming replication going on, or a Cassandra database where you need a cluster of Cassandra pods running inside of Kubernetes. Things like, if a pod fails and it comes back up, how do you handle failure detection and cluster membership? These are all much more difficult problems than just, I need to store my data somewhere, right? And that's exactly what hopefully the standards that Melissa's talking about, that we're going to solve those types of problems here in DOKC.
Gabriel, who's driving this? Is it more of the IT ops side of the house, or is it developers who are driving adoption of Kubernetes? It kind of seems to me sometimes when I talk to developers, they get a little concerned about it's complex, there's productivity issues. The IT ops guys, I find, like Kubernetes a little bit more because it's just more efficient, it scales, it allows them to orchestrate containers. So who's in the front seat driving this bus?
I don't think there's a rule of thumb for that. I believe that, as I said before, this is an emerging change, a change that will require retraining, will require skills adaptation. We need people that learn Kubernetes, for example, get the CKA. The CKA, for example, certification process is a very good is a very good entry level to understand Kubernetes. So as it happens most of the times, the first step is to actually be aware of what's there. And I believe that that's the main challenge that we see nowadays. For example, nowadays with developers or DBAs that don't know about Kubernetes, it's seen like a threat, okay, or something that requires them to change, and so that brings resistance. That's natural. Okay, I think that by having a shared team with cross-functional skills, so that developers can work together with DBAs, with sysadmins, with network administrators, with product managers and leaders. That's how I think we can go cross the chasm. Okay, so go beyond that point and also make it successful. I think it's for the good of the organizations that we actually embark in this journey. That's what I believe.
All right. Melissa, you're queen for the day in the land of Kubernetes. No committees, nobody else to consult, and you can just declare anything that you want to have happen. What would it be to advance stateful applications in the land of Kubernetes? What's the thing we really need to solve?
That is an excellent question. From a technical perspective, I would actually ask Gabriel and Umair what they would see. I think from our perspective on the community side, our goal and mission is to bring people together to figure out what does that look like. So we have these things in place, and what additional changes do we want to see inside of Kubernetes community and also outside of the Kubernetes community? And that's what we're focused on for the next 6 months of DOKC. And I think I'll have a better answer to your question before the next KubeCon. That's really what we're trying to focus on in the next 6 months.
All right. Umair, what are your thoughts? You're king for the day. What would you fix?
Yeah, so I kind of touched upon it previously on the notion of distributed applications and why that's difficult. I had mentioned earlier about how containerization was really big, and that was really why I believe that was such a big revolution in IT was because it really unlocked the notion of infrastructure portability. Kubernetes came along, unlocked application portability. And what we really need is data portability, right? To kind of take us to that next level. We need to be thinking about multi-cloud, hybrid cloud. We're seeing a huge movement in repatriation from public cloud back to private cloud. And a lot of customers are feeling like their data is locked into particular cloud vendors. So I think if I were king, I would allow data just to sort of roam freely around the clouds.
Gabrielle, any thoughts?
No, I agree with Umair. So that's I would probably speak more loudly about the fact that stateful workloads are possible in Kubernetes and show how. I think the problem, as it always happens, the first opinion you form of something, that's what stays in mind, and that it's hard to change. And that's unfortunately what for many years people have thought about databases on Kubernetes. But that, for example, my story is about that. I was very skeptical, and when I started to embark a new Postgres operator journey, I had the fail fast mindset. So I was trying to fail as fast as I could to prove that that was not a possible road, applying all my experience with my team on Postgres. And we actually managed to measure pretty much unexpected performance results. And that's what led me to actually continue and embark on this journey with more motivation and this multi-year goal of making Postgres and databases work in Kubernetes like in any other environment. And I think even better, that's the goal.
All right, Umair, let me come back to you for a minute. What's the most common mistake that you see people making as they think about stateful applications and Kubernetes? And when you're out talking to customers, what's the thing you wish they would all realize sooner?
That's a good question. I think people think operators, or even before operators existed, just that stateful sets made everything easy. That was a common mindset for some time. Then the operator pattern emerged, and people realized, okay, there's something more that needs to be done besides just stateful sets. We need to start thinking about operations. How do I address some of those issues I mentioned earlier? But to be honest with you, I still think there's a gap. We're still not there with operators. And it's, again, as Melissa mentioned, there are no standards. There are nothing in place. And everybody, to their credit, database vendors realize that if you think of a sort of a Venn diagram of DBAs and SREs, the overlap is minimal at best, right? So somebody who's good at Kubernetes is probably not good at database administration. Somebody who's a good DBA probably doesn't know how to code an operator, right? So to their credit, again, we're seeing vendors creating their own operators because they know it's a hard problem to solve. But the result in that is that everybody's doing it their own way, right? So I'm going to put myself in a customer's perspective or customer's shoes and think of if I'm running a Kubernetes cluster and I have to deploy Elasticsearch and Mongo and Cassandra and Postgres, do I want 4, 5, 7, 10 different operators? And thinking about kubectl Elasticsearch differently than I think of kubectl Mongo. And to be honest, in our conversations with customers, that's really not what they want. They want another standard, higher level of standard, where they can think of all of these applications in the same way. So I would, to answer your question, I think the mistake, not necessarily customers think, I think they innately understand that, but our users, I think the mistake that the industry sees really is that we've solved the problem and it's time to move on.
All right, one operator to rule them all. Gabrielle, what's your best advice to folks in terms of getting started here with stateful applications and databases in particular? Is there something you wish people knew?
I think the same concepts as we had in bare metal or virtual machine scenarios, they still apply here. We have to understand from the bottom up all the layers. So I would say storage is the same. Okay, so whether it's in bare metal or VMs. By the way, you can use Kubernetes on bare metal and Postgres on bare metal in Kubernetes as well. And we've had, for example, amazing results. Okay, so to have experts on all layers, and most importantly, I think know Kubernetes. So that's the first step. We need people that are proficient with Kubernetes to fill the gap with, and also to help the whole team having conversations with vendors or customers, or even to in problem solving. Okay, and let's not forget, as much as we try and simplify IT, especially distributed systems, they're very complex systems, and nothing is easy. So most problems today need a team of people to solve them. And that's where I think the future lays for us. Build these solid teams of multidisciplinary skilled members where Kubernetes is also present and can drive the change in the organization.
All right, Melissa, we promised people that IT was going to get easy, and we gave them Kubernetes. So clearly we got a little bit of a disconnect here. Where are we going to be a year from now, from your perspective? And ultimately, what do you hope that this community accomplishes in relation to all the other groups that are floating around Kubernetes and are trying to promote one aspect of it versus another? How do all these various communities come together?
Well, I think what we see is, people are kind of converging around Kubernetes as this layer that we can potentially standardize around. And that's what we saw in our survey. So when we look a year from now, what I would like to see from DOKC is an understanding of how can we make Kubernetes more ready for data than it is today. And I think to Amira's point about data moving freely, that's a really important part of what we're looking at. How can we make that a much easier process for end users? And then, as Gabrielle is saying, on the other side of it, the skills gap that we're seeing. And that is something that we also saw in our survey. When you look at the challenges people have running DOK, a lack of skilled expertise is right up there in the list. And so I think that us looking at kind of both sides of the problem, right? How do we look at solving the kind of technical challenges in and outside of Kubernetes? And how do we look at solving the kind of people skills expertise challenges? And we want to help bring that to the forefront. Kubernetes has a lot of, it has its own concern as a container orchestrator, and it has storage SIGs and data protection working groups and things like that are participating in Kubernetes, but it doesn't have that kind of same focus for data. And that's what we're hoping to bring to the table, both working collaboratively with the Kubernetes community and with the people in our community.
All right, guys, you heard it here first. There's going to be massive amounts of data on fleets of Kubernetes clusters by this time next year, and we're all going to be better for it. Hey, folks, thanks for being on the show, sharing your knowledge and insights.
Thank you so much. Great. It was a pleasure.
All right, that rounds out today's Techstrong TV broadcast. Hope you enjoyed today's broadcast as much as I did. We had so many great conversations on today's show. Just a couple quick reminders for you. We've got some great events coming up before the end of the year. First up is the Low Code, No Code event. That's happening November 18th. It's a virtual event, and we have an exceptional lineup of speakers for the day-long event. You can go to techstrongevents.com, check out the agenda, the speaker lineup, and register for it. We highly encourage you to. It's a great topic, and there are lots of great takeaways to be had at this virtual summit. Next thing is a live event. I'm very, very excited about it. It is InnoTech taking place in Oklahoma City, December 1st. I will be there checking it out and doing some interviews. Hope you can join me there. And the final event, want to let you know about before the end of the year, is FinCon DX. That one is happening December 9th. It is a virtual event as well. It's aimed squarely at the financial services community, but there are takeaways for folks in pretty much any industry. So I highly recommend you take a look at that agenda and hopefully register for it as well. You can get more information on all three of these events if you're interested. Just go to techstrongevents.com. We have all of the events listed there, and you can get to each event individually and register for each one at that site. So hope you can join me at least at one of them, hopefully all three of them. But as far as Techstrong TV goes, I'll be back on Monday with a fresh new show for you. So I hope you join me then. Until then, though, I hope you have a great weekend. Please, whatever you do, please stay safe.